All right. I now call to order the special planning commission meeting of May 10th, 2021. I would like if all the commissioners would mute and then please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for the statement of values. Commissioner Chirakuru.
Thank you, Chair. As we gather, we humbly seek blessings upon this meeting. May we act with strength, courage, and will to perform our obligations and duties to our people with justice to all. Let us seek wisdom so that we may act in the best interest of our people, our neighbors, and our country. All this we ask so we may serve our community with fairness and respect, putting their needs before all. Please be seated.
Please be seated. Elizabeth, please call the roll.
Commissioner Biagini, Commissioner Chirakuru,
Aye.
Commissioner Hero,
Here.
Commissioner Wang,
Yes.
Commissioner Casey,
Yes.
Chair Salame.
Here.
Thank you.
We'll check a little bit later to see if Commissioner Biagini is able to make it. If not, we can proceed to an excuse absence if possible. Skip that for now. So I should read out. Commissioner Chirakuru, can you please read the procedures below into the record?
Sure can. Public hearings are conducted by the chair in accordance with the following procedures. The chair of the commission directs all activity during the hearing. All comments shall be addressed to the commission. Any item on this agenda may be continued to a subsequent hearing. Applicants will be alerted up to 10 minutes to present and justify proposals following staff presentation of the item. Other speakers will be given up to 2 minutes. The applicant is allotted up to 5 minutes for rebuttal of comments. No additional comments will be accepted upon the close of public hearing, although the commission reserves the right to direct questions to any speaker on any matter. Special procedures, time limits may be applied to any items as prescribed by the chair. Appeal of commission actions must be filed in writing within 7 calendar days. That's the end of procedures, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Copies of the current agenda and staff reports for each of the items on the agenda are available from the Planning Commission office on the Friday afternoon preceding the meeting and available online. That moves us into continuances and exceptions. This part of the meeting allows for applicants, members of the public, or other interested parties to request an item be 1, continued without hearing, 2, withdrawn, or 3, taken out of order. Are there any requests from applicants, the public, or the commission for a continuance or an exception for any item on tonight's agenda?
Chair, there are no requests.
All right, thank you. The Planning Commission normally has 7 members. Whenever the full commission is not present, applicants have the option to continue their item to another meeting. I think we are down 1 full member and have a missing member tonight, so we'll be operating at 5, which is 1 above the minimum quorum. So if there are any applicants that wish to move their presentations or their applications to another time, they should chime in. Anything? No.
There are no hands raised.
All right. Can we move on to the consent calendar? Secretary Chirukuru.
The procedure for the consent calendar is as follows. Consent calendars may be enacted, approved, or adopted by one motion unless requested to be removed by anyone for discussion or explanation. If any member of the Planning Commission, staff, the applicant, or a member of the public wishes to comment on a consent calendar item or would like the item to be heard on the regular agenda, please make this request now. Items listed on today's calendar are Planning Commission meeting minutes of April 28, 2021. 1B, request to consider using Planning Commission funds for form-based code training. 1C, action on a use permit for a master sign program at 2350 Mission College Boulevard.
Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar or any actions to pull an item?
This is Priya, Chair, and I'm going to plead guilty. I haven't had a chance to review the use permit for the master sign program. Can we actually hear the item?
Okay, well, if we need to pull the item because of the schedule today and the order of execution, I'd like to move that to the end of the agenda, and then we can talk about it after the other more lengthy open item. I don't think we need to have a motion for that. We'll just we'll address 1C at the end of the other presentation. Okay. Is there a move to approve the remainder of the consent calendar, 1A and 1B?
So moved. Priya?
In a second. Oh, people are on mute.
Second. Sorry. Oh, okay. Never mind.
Okay, we have a motion in a second.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I think we lost Commissioner Akezi on volume.
Oh, well, I'm here, but I mean, I withdraw my second because Commissioner Wang provided.
The motion
Thank-
is to approve items 1A and 1B on the consent calendar. Commissioner Chirukuru,
Aye.
Commissioner Hero,
Yes.
Commissioner Wang,
Yes.
Commissioner Akezi,
Yes.
Chair Salame.
Yes.
Thank you.
I heard that to be a unanimous pass, so we can thank you, and we'll move on to public presentations. Are there any members of the public that would like to briefly address the commission on any item not on the agenda? Any hands up or requests?
No, there are no requests.
Okay, so then we could zip right along in record time to the public hearing portion. And I think we have one item, which is the action on El Camino Real specific plan, the general plan amendment for the creation of 4 new general plan land use designations, creation of the El Camino Real zoning district, and the environmental impact report and mitigation monitoring and reporting program. Can we have the staff please proceed with the presentation?
Yes, thank you. I'm just going to share my screen.
I'm going to go mute so that if you need me, nudge me.
Can everyone see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes, I'm good. Great. Thank you. All right. I'm Leslie Xavier. I am the principal planner with the city of Santa Clara working on the El Camino Real specific plan. And tonight, our consultant, Alessandra from Ramey and Associates will be helping me do this presentation, but I'm going to start it off for us. going to give a brief overview, go over some key elements of the plan, the creation of zoning districts for the El Camino Real corridor, and then the environmental impact report. So what is the project? The project is a specific plan for the El Camino Real in Santa Clara. The specific plan refines and implements the 2035 general plan vision for the area. And this includes some high-level policies that are included in the general plan, such as overall development heights between 3 to 5 stories, require that development respect the scale of adjacent residential uses, provide an economically viable mix of uses, exploring allowing higher densities and intensities at key intersections, and developing with a minimum 0.15 FAR of commercial uses. So what the specific plan does is it creates goals, policies, and design standards for all properties located within the boundary of the plan. It identifies specific improvements and actions needed to achieve the vision for the plan and addresses the required specific topics, such as land use, transportation, and infrastructure. And then we also have an environmental impact report that assesses the potential environmental impacts of the specific plan. So a little bit of background, the El Camino Real corridor is located in what's called a priority development area, or a PDA, and these are established by the Metropolitan Transportation Commission and the Associated Bay Area of Governments, ABAG and MTC, which are now called Bay Area Metro. And these areas are regional priorities for walkable transit-served development. There's 170 of them in the Bay Area. The El Camino is one of them. And since El Camino is within a PDA, the city did receive a grant from ABAG MTC, or Bay Area Metro, to fund the creation of a specific plan. So the El Camino Real planning boundary, it's a 3.2-mile corridor from the western city limits to Lafayette Street, and it's the both sides of El Camino Real corridor. And then as a part of the process, we also expanded the boundary to include the area around City of Santa Clara City Hall. Community engagement was really central to the development of the specific plan. We started this process in 2017. And over that time, between now and then, we had 3 community workshops, 5 pop-up events, which were held at locations like the train station, at the Target Shopping Center, and the Farmers Market. We also did 2 online surveys. We had 4 Community Advisory Committee meetings, and we had our 5th meeting of the Community Advisory Committee in September of 2020 to review the draft of the specific plan itself. And then following that, we held a virtual community open house to present the plan to the larger community. So the key takeaways from all of our community outreach really shaped the specific plan itself. I've highlighted here just some of the big key takeaways: encourage higher intensity development at our activity centers, provide a variety of housing choices, minimize privacy impacts, support retail, add parks and public spaces. Also, improving bicycle and pedestrian safety, connecting to the Santa Clara Transit Center, so Caltrain and what will one day be BART Station, accommodating protected bike lanes, providing wider sidewalks and street trees, and pedestrian scale lighting. These are the desired outcomes. These are contained in Chapter 2 of the plan, the vision, which lays out the overall vision for the plan. And they include more parks, plazas, and open spaces, landscaping and street trees, a walkable environment, better mobility and connections, more transportation options, efficient and shared parking, compatibility with adjacent neighborhoods, local and regional destination, a diversity of uses and retail amenities, a balanced approach to housing, beautification, support, health and well-being, and green building and sustainable infrastructure. So these desired outcomes really help shape all the policies and standards that are in the specific plan itself. And is Alessandra, was she promoted?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you, Alessandra.
Okay. Good evening, commissioners and staff. Good to see you again. Since we reviewed many of the detailed elements of the plan at the study session, tonight I'm going to focus on the land use plan and the transportation concept and to provide a few more details on some of the questions that have come up in the Planning Commission and the City Council study sessions over the last 2 months. And one of those is regarding retail conditions along the corridor, both before and since COVID. So internet sales, of course, have had a significant negative impact on certain segments of retail over the last decade or two, namely electronics, apparel, and the like, whereas experience and service retail sectors such as restaurants and gyms were pretty strong before COVID, but have really been kind of decimated by the pandemic. Before COVID, we studied retail conditions along the corridor, and what we were seeing were that occupancy levels were holding steady. They were pretty high, even though sales along the corridor were a little lower than industry standards. Many existing retail properties are small and shallow relative to current market requirements and what retailers are really looking for, so that's a challenge. And then the trade area is also largely built out and constrained by nearby competition from Valley Fair Mall and Santana Row, among other kind of commercial shopping centers. Next slide. So let's see here. Sorry. So wanting to balance the community's desire to retain retail along the corridor with kind of this decline in brick and mortar retail and the threat of vacancies led to a strategy that focused on intensification of retail development at major intersections, with grocery anchors being kind of a target and a community desire. We also wanted to encourage the repurposing of existing retail spaces for local serving tenants, such as cultural restaurants, gyms, and services, which will hopefully kind of bounce back in the next 6 months to a year. And we also wanted to reduce the number of properties for which commercial use is a requirement, again, to make sure that we don't start seeing a lot of vacancies along the corridor. And then lastly, promoting retention and strengthening of existing commercial businesses. Next slide. So here you see the land use plan for El Camino Real. Adoption of the plan will change the general plan land use designations along the entire corridor to include regional commercial mixed use, which is kind of the purple color, corridor mixed use, which is that red color, and then corridor residential, which is orange. And then of course we have City Hall, which is public, quasi-public, which is staying as is. So the purple regional commercial mixed use sites, those are those big shopping centers and those activity nodes, and they would support the most intensive uses. In the middle is the red, or the corridor mixed use designation. It's a medium density designation where there are some areas that require ground floor commercial. And then you have orange, which are the kind of the least intensive areas of just kind of lower density townhomes and garden apartments. Looking at the hatching, those are areas along the corridor, again, going back to kind of the retail strategy where ground floor commercial is required. So again, we wanted to focus the required commercial around those big activity center nodes, making sure that it was supporting commercial on the other side of those big shopping centers and at those bigger intersections where it's going to be more viable. Next slide. Next, we have some of the growth projections along the corridor. So the general plan currently identifies capacity to build 2,274 units within the El Camino Real focus area, of which about 1,500 units have been approved or built, with another 500 or so units in pending applications since then. And then this plan, this land use plan, would result in an estimated 6,200 additional units of residential. And then again, because we're trying to kind of focus the commercial, we're estimating that the commercial square footage would be reduced by about 395,000 square feet. But since the corridor, when we kind of studied existing conditions, has approximately, let's see, I believe it's about 2.2 million square feet of commercial at the moment. even after this change, there would still be 1.8 million square feet of retail along the corridor. And just to give kind of a frame of reference, that's about the same as Valley Fair before the most recent expansion. Next slide. So now I'm going to go through in a little bit more detail those three designations. So again, regional commercial mixed use, this is the most intensive at those big activity center sites, such as Santa Clara Town Center and Moonlight Center. We would expect to see potentially a mix of one-story retail buildings and then vertical or horizontal mixed use with ground floor retail and 5 to 6 stories of multifamily housing above. We have design standards and guidelines in the plan to promote pedestrian-oriented frontages and facades. Ground floor commercial is required along El Camino Real in those locations. Again, because this is more intensive, we would expect to see mostly structured parking. And then new development in this designation will be required to provide a large kind of publicly accessible open space as well. Next slide. So this slide presents just one concept for how that could look on the ground at Moonlight Center and one kind of conceptual site plan diagram. So you might have some horizontal mixed use with one-story retail on one corner of the property and a little bit of surface parking. And then the rest of the site would have kind of your more standard vertical mixed use with ground floor commercial and residential above, and a nice large publicly accessible plaza in the center. And then of course, this is a lot of these sites are extremely large and wide. It would be a really huge block. So we've also included standards in the plan to kind of break up those large super blocks into smaller block structures with new streets and pathways, internal streets and pathways through the site, as you see here. Next slide. So the kind of the medium density residential designation is corridor mixed use. The densities are about 45 to 65 dwelling units per acre and 4 to 5 stories. Again, you might see a combination of some one-story retail, horizontal mixed use, or vertical mixed use with ground floor commercial and residential above. Commercial is required in a few specific locations along El Camino in this designation, as you saw from the commercial overlay on the land use map. And that mostly corresponds to kind of the larger intersections. In this designation, you'd expect to see parking kind of behind buildings or below grade or in structures. And then you might see kind of some shared open space, but not quite as large or as much as the regional commercial mixed use. Next slide. And then lastly, we have corridor residential. This is the lowest intensity designation at 16 to 45 dwelling units per acre and 3 to 4 stories. So this would be your low to mid-rise residential building types, such as garden apartments and townhomes or stacked flats. Commercial ground floor uses are allowed and encouraged in this designation, but not required because the parcels are really small and shallow, and commercial is not necessarily viable. And then this also provides a really good transition to single-family neighborhoods behind in this designation. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more right now. So this map provides some kind of existing conditions on neighborhood adjacencies along the corridor. This was something that was really important to the community when we talked to them during our engagement events. As you can see, most of the parcels along the corridor directly abut single family homes. So that's that orange color. So we have to be very sensitive to those areas. Next, the teal areas or the aqua areas indicate parcels that abut or that are across the street from a single family parcel. So at least you have the street as a buffer. And then finally, the navy color, this is kind of the least sensitive condition because these are parcels that are abut or are across the street from multifamily residential that's already probably at least 2 to 3 or 4 stories tall. Next slide. So some of the neighborhood transition strategies in the plan to address these interfaces include a 45-degree daylight plane starting at the rear property line and moving up. So the buildings have to be stepped back away from single family homes. and I can, I'll show you a picture or a diagram of what that looks like in a minute. So there's also increased building setbacks along the rear, adjacent to single family homes, upper story setbacks, as I mentioned, design standards that get at architectural articulation and encouraging smaller scale house form building types and varied roof lines that are, again, more in keeping with single family homes. And then providing landscape buffers and orienting primary windows and balconies away from homes for privacy. Next slide. So here you'll see some diagrams of what that might look like for the conditions directly abutting single family homes in the rear. So you'd have a large kind of setback area with trees and landscaping and for screening. And you have the upper floor setbacks away from single family homes. With some varied roof lines that are a little bit more house-like. Next slide. And here you see two diagrams showing kind of the neighborhood transition strategies across where single-family homes are across the street. So again, you promoting kind of individual building entries as a way to transition or mesh with the single-family homes in the area, providing more detailed architectural articulation and upper floor step backs as well. Next slide. So here we have one of the questions that came up at the study session was in regards to kind of shade and shadow on some of those single family homes to the rear. And so we took one of the models that we had for a corridor mixed use parcel at Calabasas Creek, and we have some videos, or actually, no, maybe not the video, right, Leslie?
There's one video after
one video.
this
Okay,
slide. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. This just shows the screenshots of what the shadows look like at various times of the year. So you have kind of summer solstice, June 20th. So in the summer, what we found was that there was no shadows that were cast on the single family homes behind. It was pretty much the same for the fall equinox in September. And then really the only time of year that we found that there was a kind of a shade or shadow impact on the single family homes was winter solstice on December 21st. And I think Leslie can show the time lapse video of that on the next slide.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Let's see. There we go.
Yes, so as you can see, it does impact 3 of the properties behind the building. But again, that's in the winter. That's kind of the darkest, the shortest day of the year when there are a lot of shadows cast from a number of, from most development at that time of year. So next I'm going to get into the transportation and the right-of-way concepts for El Camino Real. So this is just looking at the existing conditions. So right now there are 3 travel lanes with a left turn lane, on-street parking, and then bus boarding, which occurs from the sidewalks. There are no bike facilities along El Camino Real, and the sidewalks are very narrow, only about 8 to 9 feet on each side. So as you can tell, it's a very wide right-of-way, 120 feet or so, mostly devoted to cars and traffic with very little space for bicyclists and pedestrians. Next slide. So in the short term, we have an interim concept for the right-of-way, which could be achieved again in maybe a few years with less expense. And then I'll talk about kind of the final right-of-way concept. So the idea is to remove on-street parking in the short term to accommodate a protected bikeway. This could be through either a median or kind of a less expensive temporary physical barrier, such as bollards. Bus boarding would still occur from the sidewalk, so there is still the potential for some conflict between bicyclists and buses at those stops. And then you would start to see wider sidewalks and street trees, additional street trees, as parcels start to redevelop along the corridor. Next slide. So just getting into kind of the interim and final bike lane implementation a little bit more. So it will require the removal of on-street parking spaces, which will be kind of phased. And the implementation of both the interim and the final right-of-way concept does require Caltrans approval. The city did do a parking occupancy analysis a while back. So there are currently 446 parking spaces available along El Camino Real. The parking occupancy analysis concluded that on average throughout the day, about 31% of the on-street parking spaces were utilized, so not very high. But there are a few properties that don't have enough on-site parking to meet their overall parking demands. And those are these three. So Diver Dan's Grand Prix Power Sports, and then the El Camino Coin Wash and Dry, Custom Hairstyling, El Camino Real Realty, JC Beauty, and Santa Clara Montessori. So in these specific locations, on-street parking would be maintained until those sites redevelop. And then lastly, this is the final right-of-way concept. So again, it would involve removing on-street parking to accommodate a cycle track with a permanent physical median. And then it would also involve adding bus boarding islands, and then the cycle track would move behind the bus boarding islands to reduce conflicts between bicyclists and transit rider, or buses, I should say. And this would, again, this is the kind of the final concept that will take longer to achieve. And again, you'll see kind of 20-foot sidewalks with additional street trees and furnishings as more and more parcels start to redevelop in the future. This slide just shows what that looks like in plan view and how the cycle track kind of moves around the bus boarding islands at those stops. And then on the next slide, that's just a kind of a real world example of what this looks like. So you can see the cycle track moving behind the bus boarding island. And then on the right, that's just an example of a cycle track where they actually have a landscaped median strip that protects the bikers from the traffic. Next slide. So next I'm going to turn it back over to Leslie, and she's going to go through kind of more of the implementation pieces of the plan.
Yeah, so thank you. So in our implementation chapter, we do have a community benefits section, and this is to encourage development along El Camino Real to provide enhancements that benefit the community in addition to those that are typically required for increased development potential. That would be done through a development agreement. So a developer could propose an extra story of height or extra density, and in exchange for that, they would provide the community benefits. And some of the benefits that are outlined in the plan include, new publicly accessible open space, supporting and preserving existing commercial businesses, utility improvements, bicycle and pet amenities, public parking facilities, public art, also possibly a community shuttle or other in lieu contributions. And a development agreement would be approved by the city council, so it would be something that would be negotiated with the developer. So this is one option for implementation of the plan should a developer want to go above and beyond what the plan allows. And then finally, as a part of the adoption of the specific plan, we are also adding 3 new zoning districts to Title 18 of the Santa Clara City Code. And these districts would apply to the El Camino Real corridor, and they directly correlate with the objective design standards that are located within the specific plan. So once if the zoning is adopted and would be then in Title 18, a developer could come and rezone to one of these 3 land use designations as it's consistent with its general plan land use designation, and then go through our architectural design review process. So there'd be a direct match from what the land use designation is to what the zoning allows. So there'd be a consistent process, whereas sometimes general plan and zoning doesn't always match up. But this would be a consistent matchup for those properties. So this would be Once a zoning district was adopted, the next step for the city would actually be to rezone sites along the corridor. Additional community outreach is needed in order to do that, as well as a council action. The state does encourage, and I do believe possibly require with new state laws, cities to make their general plan land uses and their zoning districts align. So this would further that. And then finally, we have our environmental impact report. So we did an environmental impact report for the specific plan in accordance with the California Environmental Quality Act. We analyzed program level impacts for the specific plan. There was a notice of availability that was circulated for a 45-day review period from December 10th of 2020 to January 25th, 2021. The EIR found that potentially significant impacts can be mitigated to a less than significant level, and the mitigation measures are included in the mitigation and monitoring and reporting program. During the draft EIR comment period, we received a total of 11 comments, and none of those comments identified any new significant impacts. So there are some existing pending projects on the corridor. There are currently 4. One of them is inactive. There hasn't been any action or any movement on the project in quite some time. That's on the Mariani site. We do have 3 other projects that are currently active. 2 of them meet the proposed land use designation of the specific plan, and 1 does not. I've got a slide right here for you. So it's located at the corner of Calabasas and El Camino, and they're proposing a rezoning to allow 60 residential units, 40 townhomes, 20 stack flats. Would get at a density of 24 dwelling units per acre. This density is less than the 45 to 65 that the specific plan is proposing. So one of the recommendations the Planning Commission could make tonight is to whether to keep the specific plan as proposed, or to change the specific site to a lower designation to accommodate this proposed project.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but is that the Wheels and Deals lot?
It's next to Wheels and Deals.
Got
at
it,
the corner, yes. So finally, again, we're asking the Planning Commission to adopt resolutions recommending that the City Council approve and certify the final environmental impact report, adopt a resolution approving the El Camino Real specific plan, adopt a resolution approving the general plan text amendment, creating the new general plan land use designations, and adopt an ordinance amending the zoning code to create the El Camino Real zoning district. And with that, this concludes staff's presentation.
All right. Well, thank you. That's quite impressive amount of work and the time spent. I think we have questions from staff at this point, or for staff. I can't see, I need to see my hands and agenda. There we go, participants. I already see a hand from Commissioner Cherakuru. She'd like to start the process.
Sure. Thank you, Chair. And can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Love it. I've always very, very thankful for all the progressive efforts the city does. A couple of quick clarifying questions, and it might not all get answered today. Do we have a general number that ABAG has allocated for us in terms of housing count? And are we meeting that? I know you stated the general plan target, and the general plan target might be different from the ABAG. So I want to know if there is an actual ABAG target that we still have to meet. Side note, on the actual elements, this might be just me repeating. I just want to acknowledge the cultural sensitivity, and I know the restaurants were mentioned as a cultural, but there's larger than that. There's retail that goes with those kind of cultural pockets. I did not see explicitly a comment or an actual address of green spaces. I saw streetscapes. I'm hoping that the plan entails, almost mandates, a lot of trees be planted. Otherwise, it's just going to be a concrete jungle. The most lively neighborhoods are those that have a lot of trees that allow for a lot more shade, and pedestrians tend to gather around that. So I'm just asking if that's been called out explicitly. And a couple of process questions. When we are adopting this, will we still get to see the form-based codes come back to Planning Commission, or the objective design standards, however you're going to address it? Because I don't know if this is once and for all, and Planning Commission role kind of dilutes with just the zoning administration or architectural review committee hearings that take on. But I did not understand if we were going to be able to look at and comment on the form-based codes and objective design standards associated with this and then other specific plans. And last process question, the zoning code that would, or the districts that are going to be instituted new, what would be the use classifications allowed within those zoning districts? I saw general mixed use, but I didn't see an explicit acknowledgement of the specific types of uses. And I'll state it again for my open acknowledgement. I don't want to see data centers here again. And I want to make sure that it allows for a real, lively, pedestrian, thriving neighborhood. And I would like to see more of a diversity in colors, aesthetics. I mean, it is so boxy right now with all the new development. And I saw that with all the photos you just had, they look just the same. There is nothing that's making it an actual, more like an organic, an actual community that has its ability to express itself. It looks box, everything has glass, same colors, earthy tones. I don't know if it's mandated to have only earthy tones. I mean, can we have a flash of color? But all of that, I wanted to see if it comes through in our objective design standards. So those are my questions. I know it was a mouthful. I hope you got it all, but I'll rest there. Thank you.
I'll let staff pick who wants to start tackling a few of those.
Okay, you want me? Okay. So as far as the ABAG units, they did give us a lot of units, more than what's currently in the general plan. That is a number I'd have to get back to you on. I don't have it on the top of my head, but I do have that number. I recall that it was more than our general plan currently calls out. As far as the cultural sensitivity, yes, we did add the into the desired outcomes, the one sentence. As far as adding it as a policy or a standard, that's not something we can really do. The best that we can do is to add it as a desired outcome and encourage people to maintain those businesses and improve them. As far as the green spaces, so if you recall, on our larger activity centers, we are requiring publicly accessible spaces, and there is a standard that requires a certain amount of trees based on the space. So we do have that as a requirement, as well as the requirement of planting street trees where possible, as long as there's no utility conflicts, and as well as some options for planting them in above ground planters if they can't plant street trees in front of their buildings. So that is called out in the plan. As far as the process, we are not doing a form-based code with the El Camino Real specific plan. We are adopting zoning districts, as I said, and those zoning districts do include objective design standards. So in the specific plan in Chapter 4, those are our development standards. That is one thing we did from when we originally released the draft plan in May of 2020 to what you see that's posted on our website now, and what was posted for this hearing is we've changed a lot of the standards to the objective design standards. Those are incorporated into our proposed zoning district. So this would be the time. Those standards are there for you to look at. So this would be the time that you would be recommending adoption of those objective standards. They're a part of the specific plan, and they're also in the zoning ordinance. The zoning district also includes allowed uses. And so that was also a table that's in the proposed zoning ordinance. We did not specifically call out data centers as being approved or not approved, permitted or not permitted, sorry. And then as far as the architecture, we do have design standards that talk to the massing, to floor heights, to diversity of materials, but we don't have anything specifically requiring different colors. That's not something that we included.
Yeah, we do have, if I'll add, well, as part of kind of establishing a base, middle, and top for buildings, one of the options is that they can do a change in materials and or colors between, say, the base, middle, and the top of the building. And we do have an objective standard that also gets at kind of the percentages that we want to see for kind of accent materials, primary materials, secondary materials, and accent materials on a building.
Provides a little flexibility to choose colors, materials for the developer.
Thank you. And through the chair, just one last question. There's a lot of activity that literally huddles around street. What do you call them? Those, the food trucks. People, it's something that any place that you find really that's drawing activity are those kind of street facing, whether it's Singapore, whether it's New York, that kind of an activity that's not too big, that's not just storefront, that engages at the pedestrian walkability level. So it could be street hawkers. I know it can become a nuisance, but I just want to make sure that that kind of an engagement is something that most people like in these kind of urban centers, whether it's San Francisco, whether it's New York, your most memories are built walking with these street vendors. And so I want to make sure that it allows and it has that appropriate spaces for those kind of food stalls or little nooks and crannies of street vending options. Why not? It doesn't have to be like we are a city within just walls. So let the life come outside walls. I would highly encourage those be included into the actual allowances or uses. That's why I was asking, where are the uses defined for these kind of retail / restaurants / other entertaining, and theaters galore. Go for an open theater too. I mean, drive-in theater, sure, be my guest. But those are things that I have not seen. Maybe I have to read more. But as I said, we had barely 3 days and I did not have time to go through it at length. So thank you for that feedback. I yield, Chair. Go ahead, staff, if you want to respond.
I'm going to pull up the use table here just a sec.
Yeah, I have the use table up. It talks generally about retail establishments and, personal services, small offices. But I think we'd probably have to go look at the kind of the updated zoning code to see what's allowed in terms of kind of more like mobile vendors or kiosks. Right, Leslie?
Yeah, we didn't specifically call that out as a standalone use. In general, restaurants and retail uses are permitted. We didn't get as fine-grained as to say, like food trucks or street vendors in our land use table.
I do know that as part of our, as part of our zoning code update, we're actually trying to create an administrative process to facilitate that kind of, something where we want to encourage activity. There needs to be some boundaries around it in case there are issues. But at the same time, we don't want it where people have to go to a public hearing, and we want to make sure that the cost for that permit is not prohibitive. So that's something we're actually building into the citywide comprehensive zoning code update. So it would be very much applicable to all El Camino Real as well.
Appreciate that, because I don't know how you all, but for me, the best memories are on the walking mode and watching stuff. So thank you for that, Rita. Thanks, Steph.
And to add as well, theaters are specifically called out as a permitted use in the zoning district.
Okay, that's
you brought that one up.
Let's move to Commissioner Biagini.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're coming through fine.
Great, because I'm in a very shaky internet spot right now. Anyway, there was one thing that I've read through the documents and I'm a little concerned. I couldn't find, maybe I missed something, but I couldn't find anything that recognizes or addresses potential impacts to historical resources um, along that whole El Camino corridor. Uh, I can think of a few places just off the top of my head. Can staff tell me where I missed it, or was it missed in general? I don't know. Somebody have an answer
believe,
for that?
yeah, do you have more questions or do
Right
you
now,
want me to
that's the
answer?
biggest
Okay.
one.
So in the process of doing the environmental impact report, there were no historic resources that were found as a part of that study. However, the EIR does have a mitigation measure that requires that each structure be looked at, as projects come forward to look at more specifically. So with current information, we didn't have any historic structures with the exception of a sign, which was the Western Motel sign, which that is in there as I believe we have a policy about maintaining that sign.
Those kinds of signs. Well, if I could have a follow-up. The reason I ask that is there are a couple that are awful close. So that's why I'm talking about even the impacts. Besides the Great Western Hotel sign, I'm familiar with that one. There's, and right now it's escaping my mind, the little hotel that had the lady diving.
Oh, I know the one you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, that was one I thought of. And then I'm also thinking about when you think of the intersection of Lincoln and El Camino, right behind, I think it's called the Kettle Little Bakery, there is what I remember as a little girl, the kind of iconic building that was a lumber yard. So this is where, and now I think it's somebody help me here that's been around for a million years. I think right now it's an architectural site, but that was kind of a unique, iconic building that I so remember. And there's also, I'm going to mispronounce it, Neves, the fish market, that corner. Those are the things I'm talking about because as you build out, I mean, I love the fact that the community was very much involved in all this planning, but I'm thinking of those buildings and that there would be an impact depending upon what happens in some of those sections. And I'm sure that's not the only ones. There's also historically significant places up and down Lewis Street. So now we get into, I think, this issue of how close is this development to some of these historically significant properties. And I mean, I saw the thing about the EIR and I get that when they're digging, if they come across something, they're supposed to stop. I'm not sure they always do the way they should, but it's the impact on those buildings close to it that has me concerned. And I couldn't see it anywhere on the reports.
Yeah, so the only thing that we are requiring is that they, as individual projects come forward, they would what we call tier off this environmental impact report, but they'll still have to do their site specific analysis, which would include historic, above ground and underground.
So does that then mean that those specifics, and I'm sorry, I know I'm probably on my third question, Chair Salim, but so if that specific project came up, let's say on that corner, is this going to come before the Planning Commission? What I don't want to see happen is a negative impact on a building that's right behind what's going up in such a way that it overpowers it. It takes away, I mean, it's not even just the building, it's kind of the neighborhood too that gets involved. And it's as much as I love the fact that this has been a long time coming, there are a lot of things I like about the project, the neighborhood was involved. That seems to me to be a scary part that was missing and not addressed the way I really thought it should have been in the EIR and not in the way that it was. So I will leave my comments at that.
May I jump in, Chair? Just to clarify, the EIR does impose a condition of approval. So if there's any building that is 50 years or more old, they do have to do the standard DPR 523 form and that analysis. In addition, the city's historic preservation ordinance does provide that any project that's located within 200 feet of a historically designated site will have to go through historic review and go to the HLC. So if there are any buildings nearby that are already designated as historic, they will be protected through the city's existing process because that would require HLC consultation.
But excuse me, Xander, wouldn't that also include something that it may not be on the list right now, but it could be and therefore must be handled as such?
We don't have a protection for that. You are correct. If it's not on the list, then we don't currently protect it. There's a process to obtain designation, but what we currently address in the CIR is the site itself that's being addressed. And in our code, anything within 200 feet that has already been put on the list. So I acknowledge we don't have anything for what if the site is not on our list already.
At the result of sounding argumentative, I think if it's not a city, I could be wrong, but I believe it's a state requirement that if it could qualify as a historically significant property, it could qualify, it must be treated as if it was on the list. But
well, that's the third part of the puzzle, right? So there's the analysis of the actual site. There's the analysis required by our code for sites that are within 200.
Right.
And then the project level environmental analysis would have to consider sites that are eligible for listing. That would be a potentially significant impact under CEQA. So that has to be done for all projects under CEQA that go through environmental review. So you are accurate that that is one of the thresholds of significant if it's eligible for listing.
So it's definitely an item for consideration, and it should just be captured, as well as the idea of any building that's 47 years old right now, because as we progress, they're going to continue to get older. So you may want to look ahead a little bit for other properties and developments that suddenly become 50 during the process. I think staff can probably identify those and put orange flags on them or something.
And the 50 year is not a hard and fast, if it's 49 years and 11 months, we don't definitely say no, I mean, we're not that hard and fast about it. Obviously, if there's historic impact.
I figured that. We're a smart city on that matter. Was there any other response for Commissioner Biagini's questions or comments, and before we move on?
Just make a note, I'll be watching.
Yeah, I know your background. I trust that you'll keep us honest on that. All right, so I'm going to go next because I had my hand up too, and then we'll have Commissioner Hong and Commissioner Ikezi. The couple of things that I've been tracking on this that I still didn't see a comment on is how is the staff or how is the city going to address that conflict between bus drop-offs and bicycles? Is there a plan in place to proceed to at least understand enough about how to circumvent conflicts? Also, the second question, is there any progress or motion or investigation on a continuous shuttle from the parking structures to various businesses along the street that are going to be parking limited? Because as we remove parking from the street, we're going to force consolidation and concentration of cars to the parking structures, which is a detriment to some of the smaller businesses that are considerable distance from those structures. I think we had talked about at another point at another meeting, the possibility of business subsidized or business contributed funds for a continuous shuttle or two that move up and down El Camino, carrying people to and from those various structures. I think that will give us a huge pressure release for the inevitable parking and traffic issues that we're going to see if we don't provide something. And then I think lastly is what is the traffic study plan ahead for this new structure, or this new approach to the street layout? Has there been a professional company or group brought in? Are we going to proceed with other previously hired study groups to help us? Because I think that is a dramatically different enough way that El Camino would be configured that we really need to understand it before we commit 100% to it. I think it would be extremely expensive to revert, and it would be extremely detrimental to have us forced into that against the better interest of the community and for the businesses along there. There you go. There's a couple of questions.
Okay, so I'll start with the shuttle. So we did add the possibility of a community shuttle as a community benefit in the implementation section. So that would be a developer, asking something from the city that's above and beyond on the specific plan. And one of the things that we could say, well, the community really wants the shuttle. Can you help implement a community shuttle? So that is one way we can do it. The city currently doesn't have the direction to start a community shuttle or the funds to fund a community shuttle along El Camino at this point in time. So the best that we could do was put it as an option for a developer to implement should they be asking for something additional from the city. So that's the way we incorporated the shuttle.
Okay, before we jump past that, perhaps have somebody contact VTA and see if they want to participate as a provider, as VTA already has El Camino covered for travel.
And VTA was part of our technical advisory committee on this specific plan, and the bus, the rapid, or it's not rapid bus, the express bus. What are they? I'm blanking on the correct term for the bus right now. The bus that they do have going down El Camino is one of their higher frequency buses, and they felt that this adequately covers the usage at this time. It's not to say that sometime in the future they could see the benefit of a community shuttle, but as of right now, the bus line does provide quick, 15-minute headway service down El Camino.
All right. So just for your example, imagine going to Disneyland without the shuttles from the parking lot. How fun would that be? Not. So we as a city should try and make it as easy and as simple as possible for consumers and customers and business owners to be able to get customers to and from their door, as well as somewhat the people living there if they're going to park off-site and pay for that. Okay, that next question.
Okay, so the conflict between bus and bike, I don't know if we want to go back to the diagram or not. In the interim configuration, the bus stop and the bike lane would be shared. It would need to be striped, right? For with the stripe lines to queue bus drivers and to queue bicyclists, but it would be a shared space in the interim. The full vision for El Camino is to do a protected bike lane and a bus boarding island, which would have bikes go around the bus boarding island, so there would be zero conflict. They would always be in their own bike lane separated from the bus. So that would, the ultimate configuration is obviously the best as far as bicycle and bus conflict. And then finally, the traffic study, there was a traffic study done. Our consultant was Fair and Peers on this traffic study, and it was done with the proposed right-of-way of the specific plan. So again, we're maintaining the same 3 lanes of traffic. Those are not going away. What's going away is the parking, which we found to have a utilization of about 31% along the entire corridor. So parking would be the one thing that's removed. The 3 travel lanes will stay. And so that is part of our environmental impact report.
Okay, so I had then I'll have a follow-up on that one, which is, did the traffic study identify any other street configuration as an example of one that has already been implemented? Is there another city that has done it this way?
The environmental impact report didn't show anything.
The traffic study, was the traffic study able to identify any other city with a street configuration like we're proposing for El Camino that they could point at as an example?
It did not point at an example, no. It just studied the proposed specific plan right of way.
Okay. Yeah, it always worries me when we're implementing something brand new and then declaring it a success before we've actually built it. So just if any part of this process allows for some research to find a working example of that similar configuration of multi-lane bordered by bus and bike lane, I would love to have that at least in a note and it's something maybe put up on the website for people to see how it's working in another city. It can't be a unique one. I think that configuration is a pretty common direction for a lot of urban city mixing with new transportation, e-bikes and bicycle as an option. Okay.
Chair Salim, this is
Yes.
Rena. I just wanted to point out that Jonathan Yee, who's our traffic manager, is actually joined us, and he might have some information on other cities, as well as our traffic team has reviewed the configuration of the street and the right-of-way sections. So I don't know if he would be able to discuss kind of like the configuration, whether this is kind of typical, obviously not typical for all cities to have this configuration, but you know, if other cities have done this, and also just confirm kind of what standards they were looking at when they reviewed the right-of-way sections.
That's great. It doesn't have to be real time. I'd be really happy just to see it mentioned or given a little slot on the website on the issue on the El Camino plan, and say, this is another city that's implemented this. It looks just like it, it's working, or here's the problems and we're going to address them. You know, that much alone can take a great deal of the concern out of the unknown. Thank you.
Yeah, thank
okay.
you.
I think I don't want to like dwell too deeply on this. I want to give it a lot of time for public input, but we have Commissioner Hong next, and then Commissioner Casey.
Hi. Yeah, actually, thanks to the staff for the shadow analysis. Yeah, last meeting I expressed my concern. Yeah, when I look at the video, I feel it's really since you know, of course it's only in the winter, but actually in the winter that's the time we need the sun, right? In the summer it's so hot, maybe we don't need the sun that much, but in the winter, yeah, that's the time we need the sun. Another thing is the solar. Like in the last meeting I mentioned, right? If people put a solar panel on their roof, then you block the sun. So I think that's really an issue. Yeah, last time I mentioned since the El Camino, it's from east to west mainly, right? So you have a north side and south side. Right now in the plan, it's all treated the same. So I recommend, let's say on the north side, maybe you can limit the height to 4th floor. Maybe, but on the south side, maybe you can limit on the 6th, right? So, but if you treat them all the same, you put a number there, then the developer cannot. Let's say you put a 5 on the south. If they want to build a little bit more high density, then you cap them. So I recommend we treat the north and south side differently. The second thing is the bike lane physical barrier. If you look at the picture you showed, it's a 3 feet wide. I think the land it's really I mean, a lot of value there, right? 3 feet, it's just 3 feet concrete. What's that on the 3 feet physical barrier? I'm from Beijing, big city. They have you know, the Tiananmen Square or whatever. Their divider for the bus and the bike, they just use the short metal fence, maximum half feet. So I don't know. So yeah, let's see the 3 feet. If we can save the 3 feet for the builders to, let's see, build something, then you maybe you 3 feet more from the single family house at the back, right? Then I think it's better than just 3 feet concrete on the road. Another thing is the physical barrier. I don't know if it's create problem for street cleaning. It's some kind of obstacle, you know, for people. Maybe people easily, can be hurt, right? It's so that's my 2 main concern on the plan. Yeah, thank you. That's it.
Thank you for your comments. I would like to add that as far as the determination of what that barrier is and even the street cleaning, that'll be sort of the next step in the process. If the city has, maybe in the interim, it is painted on the ground or maybe some temporary bollards, but the final configuration will require more work on the city part. We'll have to do construction level drawings and really determine what kind of barriers can go where, as well as how we're going to clean the street. They do have special street cleaners for those narrow bike lane areas. Don't know the cost of those, but that's something we'll have to look at as we implement this bike lane and do further construction detailed drawings.
Yeah, I think the shadow, that's another, I think, very important thing. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for being patient, Commissioner Casey. It's your turn.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I have two questions. Number one, well, actually, okay, number one, there's one application currently pending or that has been submitted that doesn't meet the proposed plan. So are we going to review that individually, or I didn't quite understand what we're being asked to do. And secondly, that plan, the density is lower than what is being proposed for this specific plan. And in the past many years as on the Planning Commission, what I see is that developers come in at a lower density than what the city would like to see or what the Planning Commission would like to see. But the community benefit proposal in this plan is that the developer has to provide some benefit to the community in exchange for a higher density. So I'm not sure if the incentive is aligned with what the city wants the developer to do. And so I'd like to ask for a comment on that. So two questions. Thank you.
Okay. So the first question on the proposed application. So there's a couple options. If the plan is approved as is, and we increase the density on that site, then the applicant would have to apply for a general plan amendment to lower the density. So that's if it's approved as proposed with the higher density. There could also be a recommendation to, as a part of the specific plan adoption process, that we change the land use designation on that site to meet the density that they're proposing. So in that case, it wouldn't need to come back for a general plan amendment, and they could move on with their rezoning and architectural review.
But if we were to make that exception, shouldn't we be reviewing the plan before we do that? Or, I mean, what's being proposed? What's the actual plan? That's what my question was. Thank you.
Understood. Yes. And that's up to the Planning Commission. I'm just putting it out there that those are options for you to consider. But yes, there is a proposed project that's in process, and they're not currently set for a hearing or anything like that. But that is something that is out there, and that would be the outcome if we approve the specific plan as proposed. They would have to come back and ask for a general plan amendment.
Okay, so I'd like to comment that it is our normal process to look at the actual review for making exceptions for things.
Correct.
So that's
yes.
I want to put that comment out there.
Yes, you are correct. You are correct.
Thank you. Thank you.
Could I just chime in a little bit here? I'd just like to point out that currently the general plan land use designation for that developer site is at the density that they're proposing. So what they're actually to keep their existing density. Right now, as proposed in the specific, increasing the density dramatically. So they basically like us to just erase that change and keep the existing density. Also, I'd like to point out that if we were to increase the density by adopting the specific plan as is, it is very hard to reduce density under existing state law. Ms. Xavier is correct that we could do a general plan amendment, specific plan amendment later and reduce the density. But one catch is if you do that, you also have to simultaneously upzone another site the same night. So sure, we could reduce their density in the future as long as we had a second site that we were simultaneously upzoning, which is a big ask. So I'd just like to submit to you that if we go down that road, it's going to be very hard for the developer to actually reduce their density once we've increased.
Thank you for the full background. Thank you. Now I understand. Okay, so
Yeah,
what
thank
about
you.
the incentives?
So the incentives for community benefits. So again, a developer would want to ask above and beyond what the specific plan allows. So an extra story in height or increased density would be the two things that are likely that they would be asking for, in which case the city could then negotiate a community benefit for approving those. And that, you know, we could have artificially lowered density or building height to encourage people to do that. However, I think that it really wouldn't have met the goals of the general plan for the El Camino Real corridor in providing that diverse range of housing types and densities. It was sort of counter to that. So that's why we went with the community benefits program being an implementation strategy for developers who want to build more than the specific plan allows.
But my question is, developers tend to come in and want to build lower density than, you know.
So you're saying maybe allow the reverse, if they want to build lower density, they also have to provide community benefits?
Well, that's the trend I've been seeing for as many years as I can remember. They don't come in and say, hey, we want to build at a higher density than what the city wants. We want to build lower because, you know, lower density is typically cheaper. And it seems like their desire is driven by their, you know, cost concerns from what I've seen in the past many years.
And you're correct, Commissioner Casey, that has happened many times, and that's been accompanied by a rezoning. But under current state law, that now is a much more difficult thing to do. Once the density is raised, it's very hard for a developer to come in and say, hey, I want to build below the minimum density, because state law simply doesn't allow for that. And this community benefits program that we're proposing to include in the specific plan would not allow for that either. There's not a process to reduce the density.
Oh, I see.
That this wouldn't be the process to accomplish that ask.
I see. Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Hero, did you have a follow-up question?
No, I have a new question.
Okay. Oh,
he hasn't spoke yet.
I was looking at Hong when I was talking to you. All right, Commissioner Hero, your turn.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to ask staff, so you put some statistics out there on retail space square footage at one point, and it seems like there's a slight reduction according to this specific plan. Can you run those numbers by me one more time, please?
Sure. So the adoption of the specific plan would reduce the overall commercial square footage, you know, once implemented, by 395,000 square feet. That still leaves, is it 1.2? Alessandra, do you have that number? It's remaining on the corridor.
Sorry, yes, I think so. There's 2.2 million square feet of retail currently on the corridor, and so in the future, if we reduce it, or if it's reduced by about 400,000 square feet, it would be 1.8. Granted, again, this is just a planning level estimate, so that's just our best guess of, you know, the square footage of retail that might go away. It's not saying this is definitely happening at all. I think when we did the retail analysis, our economic consultant also said that there are many kind of like older retail establishments along the corridor that are, you know, the building is and the property are probably paid off. They're just getting a nice rent every month, and they might have no incentives to redevelop for a long time in the future. Yep.
So, like, for example, we didn't assume that the Target shopping center was going to redevelop. We assumed that that was going to stay. So that's included in, you know, the commercial square footage that would stay.
Anything newer, we assume is not getting redeveloped.
My real concern is the propensity to lose more retail than we've already lost. And that's kind of my pet peeve. Anyway, just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Okay, I think we've run through the gamut of commissioner questions. I
Mr.
hate to be,
Chair, I have Commissioner Chair Kruger's numbers if she would like them now.
okay, well, before you dive into that, I'm actually going to put you on the spot for even more. Oh no, blindsided. Now, I would appreciate, given that there's a great deal of concern around density, if you could mention the couple of state mandates and state bills that we're operating under. So it would, I think it would help the public get a better understanding why we are, as a group, encouraging some density along transportation corridors and in some areas like, you know, specifically around El Camino. Not a great in-depth conversation, but at least mentioning a couple of the bills that I think help force our hands a lot of times. And that may take away some of the anxiety that they're feeling that we're just worshiping at the altars of the developers or something. Okay.
Well, fundamentally, cities have a mandatory element in their general plans, which is, of course, the housing element. That's the only part of the city's general plan that has to be approved by the State Department of Housing and Community Development. Every 8 years, the state allocates to every large jurisdiction, every council of governments in the state, a regional housing needs allocation, a RHNA number. It says cities, counties, you have to develop programs and pass laws and implement zoning regulations that will allow for the development of this many housing units. So for Santa Clara, we're a part of the Association of Bay Area Governments, ABAG. That's our local council of governments. So every 8 years, the state allocates to ABAG a big number that the whole region has to build. And then ABAG allocates to each city how many individual units each city has to build. Right now, we're in the 2014 to 2022 compliance period of housing elements. And for that period, we have to build 4,093 units. We're about to come up to the next compliance period, which starts in January 2023. We're going to have to adopt a new housing element before then. And our RHNA number is tripling. We have to build almost 12,000 units under the new RHNA allocation. And there are severe consequences to the city if we do not take sufficient steps to further the development of housing for all income types, not just above moderate, but also moderate, low, very low income housing. There's certain state funding we will lose. There's a number of draconian penalties, including lawsuits against the city and fines against the city if we do not take aggressive steps to address the housing disaster that the state is facing. So the El Camino Real is one of the most underutilized corridors, really. It's a prime opportunity for the city to redevelop some underutilized sites. And so that is part of what the city is proposing tonight with this plan to increase density in a transportation corridor. A big change that took place in the last couple of years in our environmental documents is that rather than looking at intersection analysis when we're considering how much traffic impact will result from a project, we now look at vehicle miles traveled, VMT, and we evaluate how much will a particular project, how many more vehicle miles traveled will it put on the road, rather than measuring exactly how many cars will be at a particular intersection. So by increasing residential density near commercial uses, we're able to reduce vehicle miles traveled so that people don't have to commute as far to get to work, to get to retail. This is a prime example of a development that will reduce vehicle miles traveled. If you review the environmental analysis, you see that even though this is proposing, thousands of more dwelling units, it will actually reduce VMT overall compared to existing conditions. You also asked about current bills. There are a couple of them mentioned in the agenda report, the Housing Crisis Act and the Housing Accountability Act. Basically, they are severely limiting as far as the city's ability to disapprove of housing projects, especially affordable housing projects. One thing that they've done is they've taken away all discretion of the city to impose subjective design review standards on any housing project, market rate or affordable. So our consultants, Ramey and Associates, to their credit, really scrambled, really scrambled in the last few months to take the first draft of the specific plan, which had all these subjective standards, great ideas about, oh, we should consider these different, design aspects. And they changed all that into numerical, hard, concrete numbers so that we still have design criteria for this corridor, because one of the biggest issues is how it looks. We want it to look great, but it needs to be objective design criteria for market rate housing and for housing that's what we propose in our code, which is 15% affordability. I should note, though, that the Housing Accountability Act says that once you hit 20% affordability, we can't even have objective design criteria. It's almost anything goes. Soviet style housing can be built. So anyway, we're not requiring 20% affordability. We're requiring 15%, which I think is reasonable. I think is what the market supports. So the HAA, the Housing Accountability Act, severely limits our ability to disapprove of housing development projects and limits the criteria we can impose. And as I was mentioning to Commissioner Kesey earlier, once we set a density, it's hard for us to ever reduce that density unless we're simultaneously upzoning some other site. But we can't just sit on our hands and be like, well, we're never gonna upzone that, it's too risky. Again, we've got the housing element law. We have to provide for 4,000 dwelling units in the current compliance period and 12,000 in the next compliance period. And this is one of the major steps we're doing to accomplish that, this El Camino Real specific plan. You'll be seeing another specific plan later this year doing much the same thing.
So before we go too much deeper, give them 2 minutes of the horror show if we miss these numbers. What happened? What's the consequences of not meeting the numbers in a real sense?
I mean, I'd have to get back to you on that.
Okay, that's fine. I kind of know. It's like, go look at Saratoga, go look at Cupertino. They're experiencing this issue right now. And you pinpointed one of the draconian penalties. We are currently a 50% affordable city. What that means is, under a bill called SB 35 streamlining, if a project comes in that's 50% affordable, it goes in. We have little to no discretion to say no to that project. That's because we are, to a degree, accomplishing our RENA goals right now. But Saratoga and a couple other cities are 10% cities. Those are cities that have not achieved their RENA allocations. And so if a project comes in that's just 10% affordable, the city has to approve it. No discretion to say no. So we still have some discretion. We can apply these objective design standards, such as the ones we're proposing tonight. But yeah, we don't achieve our RENA goals, we lose all discretion, and we lose a lot of money just to keep the city running. I don't know them all offhand because the prospect of getting those penalties is just too horrible. We're never going to be in that boat because we can't. It would not be viable as a city. But you pinpointed one of the main ones, which is that we lose most of our discretionary authority if we're not hitting our RENA goals. I feel like I've rambled long enough. No, I think it's very important that people understand that a lot of these decisions are not being made out of arbitrary disinterest in community input or complete disregard of the desires for limited growth. I think a lot of us are trying to make sure that the city is healthy and still in the control of the city, so that the consequences aren't worse than anything that we can have some control over and prepare for. And I think we should probably, at this point, unless there's other staff comments, move to public hearing and hear the other input for this. Is there any other last comments from staff? No?
No, thank you.
Okay, I have a number of hands up in the public request to speak. So
Crystal M. We do have a comment submitted in e-comment that I would like to read first.
Yeah, okay. Is there some way we can capture, I guess I can take a screenshot. I'll just do that. I was going to say I wanted to capture the hands in the order that I see them. They may not be the order in which they were raised, but I don't want to have hands go down and up and reorder everything. So give me just a sec. I will capture.
Chair Salam, I have been told what you see at the top is the first hand that has been raised. So I think if you just go in order.
Okay, good. That's excellent to hear.
Okay.
All right, so go ahead with the e-comments and then we'll start down the list.
Okay, so the e-comment we have was submitted by Howard Myers, and it says, "The more I have seen these proposals as they have moved through the process, the more I wonder if this is how we ended up destroying our downtown. You have some great drawings and images that are very appealing, but I have seen the ones being proposed to justify leveling our downtown. We need to take a look at this, step back, take a breath, and ask ourselves, is this real? How can we be sure this isn't the same pipe dream the city had in the 60s? Are the pictures too perfect?" And that concludes the comment.
We only had one then.
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you. I think that's a valid concern. I don't know, Elon might disagree that if you just keep doing what we've been doing, it's okay. I think we need to shoot higher. Let's go down the list of public speakers. Tom Gregalia.
Yes. Before I start with the public speakers, just a reminder to everyone, you have 2 minutes to speak, and please state your first and last name for the record. Anyone who's calling in by phone and would like to raise their hand, please press *9.
Okay, and I guess I have to state that we're officially opening public hearing at this point. Thank you.
With that, I'm allowing Tom to speak.
I'm going to insert just one line of legalese. I apologize. Mr. Chair, technically, the public hearing was opened at the last meeting and was left.
Right.
We are simply continuing the public hearing.
All right, we're continuing the public hearing that was opened at the last meeting. Thank you for the correction. Okay, Tom, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. Planning Commissioners, thanks for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm Tom Paulia. I'm the project manager of the property at the corner of Calabasas and El Camino Real that staff talked about. I'm with Bayview Development Group. I wanted to just clarify a few things. We are not asking for an exception. We're asking to work within the specific plan that we've been a participant in for many years. And all we are asking for is a change in the designation of the draft plan. And that change is requested because the condition around us changed from the start of the specific plan. We are on the corner and the site right next to us, Wheels and Deals, got approved at the existing general plan designation, which we are, which is 25 units per acre. If we don't go down to that density, I'm asking corridor mixed use change to corridor residential, then essentially the site next to Wheels and Deals would be 65 units per acre. We'd go down to Wheels and Deals at 25 units per acre. Then we would have to go back up to 65 on the corner. And all of us are up against 4 units per acre of the Briarwood adjacent neighborhood. So I'm asking, I have a very simple ask, change us from corridor mixed use to corridor residential so that we can complement the Wheels and Deals project that's getting ready to start construction. We can complement our neighbors who we've been working with for 3 years. We can do light to light, backyard to backyard. We can have front doors facing Calabasas like the existing houses. And we can have a true transition from our property to their single story houses where we go from 3 and even down to 2 in the back, but we still have a high quality project proposed for the site. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Does staff have a comment on a patchwork issue like this? Is there a general plan in place to address the stepping up and down of density?
So when we created our land use plan, our strategy was to put the highest densities at our activity centers or our nodes, and then fill in between. That medium density designation that we're proposing for that site, we did so because it is a larger, deeper site that could accommodate that much density and meet our development standards. And then leaving some of those smaller, very narrow, shallow residential parcels to that lower corridor residential designation, where really the only thing that can appropriately fit on there would be a townhome type development. So that was our strategy in the specific plan. And we kept that strategy consistent throughout the plan, assuming that maybe that Wheels and Deals would redevelop one day, right? Because it was deeper, it could accommodate more than what's currently approved on it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it answers the question, but maybe you want to work more directly with the developer on that particular issue and see if they bring forward an option that would work for everyone. Okay, I think we'll move on to the next, which is events SVH. Please introduce yourself individually as well.
Great. Yes, thank you very much. Events SVH is actually Matthew Reed from Silicon Valley at Home. I appreciate this opportunity. Chair and members of the Planning Commission. We were honored to have a seat on the Community Advisory Board for this project. It's been a long time. It's very nice to be in this place with a final document. Versions of it have been available for a while, but it's nice to feel confident that we're in the home stretch. I'd like to really acknowledge the work that staff and the consultants have done. We are also a member of a local coalition of community members and organizations called the Santa Clara Community Advocates. We had shared some of our original vision thinking with staff and actively engaged in the process. And we actually had a discussion earlier today, and we're pleased that many of the core issues that we had raised and that had been talked about in the advisory committee meetings were right there in writing. And so it's always nice when the process pans out. Silicon Valley at Home is a housing and affordable housing advocate, and we really commend the city at leaning in and addressing some of these challenges that were raised in the last discussion about state laws. And we think it's a good plan, and that it will provide for a range of housing opportunities for people of all incomes and abilities in the El Camino corridor. I think the one comment I would have is that, and it came up, that things like the bike plan and some of the street design, the sooner the city leans into that, the more likely they are to be realized in the long run. And we appreciate the work that's been done.
Okay, thank you. Sylvia Abode, I believe, is next.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, thank you, Chair, Commissioners, and members of the City Planning. My name is Sylvia Aboud. I'm the Executive Director of Heart of the Valley Services for Seniors Incorporated. We provide free services for seniors in Santa Clara County, West Santa Clara County. And we have our building, which is city-owned. It's a little house between two auto body shops on the corner of, across the street from City Hall, on the corner of Lincoln and El Camino, 1550 El Camino. And we're just wondering, right now there's broad timelines, 2 to 3 years for the short plan, 4 to 10 years for the long plan. We're wondering where we fall in there, if we're going to need to move, and if so, kind of like an estimated timeline. I don't know if that's available at this point, but we just want to be able to plan if it's close by, and plan a little less if it's longer. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. You know, if any commissioners have a question or they have anything they want to directly request or ask of a speaker, switching back and forth to find hands up is not going to be very helpful. I'd like to go ahead and let you just jump in if you have a short question. Otherwise, we can move forward again to Brian Prescott.
Chair, I have a short question to the latest speaker.
Okay.
Why does she believe that she has to move?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. It's a city-owned house that we are renting generously from the city. We've had to move. The nonprofit is 34 years old. In that 34 years, we've had to move 4 or 5 times. Sometimes we've been in a high-rise building. Sometimes we've been in little houses. Right now, we're in a little house owned by the city, and we're just wondering if we're going to be impacted. That's all.
I can say at this time, the city doesn't have any plans to redevelop that site that I'm aware of. It would only be if the city planned to redevelop or sell that site that they would need to comply with the specific plan. So at this time, I'm not aware of the city wanting to sell or redevelop that site.
Thank you.
See, that's great. That's very helpful. All right, let's move on now, I guess, to Brian Prescott.
All right. Hello. So for the record, my name is Brian Prescott. I actually live in San Jose, but I commute along this corridor by bus to work, or at least when we were in my office. And I visit Santa Clara from time to time on my bike. I like to respectfully ask for your yes vote to accept all 4 of staff's recommendations here. I'd really just like to say that El Camino Real has a lot of potential. I'd like to applaud everyone who has worked on these proposals for doing the work of unlocking that potential and for planning for the kind of growth that this corridor is really meant for. There are already a lot of jobs and businesses and parks that you can get to along El Camino, and I'm glad that we're planning for more of those and also making space for people to live nearby. I like the bike lanes so that people can get to the parks and jobs without having to drive if they don't want to. So in particular, I really love the bike lanes. I love the way that those are planned. Those separated bike lanes, I can tell you as a cyclist, are really nice. So like when I visit Santa Clara, I come up to the area kind of around Santa Clara University, and I would like to go to some of the restaurants and shops on ECR, but like El Camino is kind of absolutely terrifying if you're on a bicycle. So that would actually make it nice. It would bring a lot of my money into Santa Clara businesses. So anyways, in short, I respectfully ask for your yes vote. It's good news for transportation. It's going to bring more of my income to Santa Clara businesses and also brings more activity to a corridor that would do really well with it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, or we can move on to Betsy Megas? I'm sorry if I'm getting these names wrong. I'm doing my best. Nobody gets my name right, so I feel a little vindicated. Okay. Betsy, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. My name is Betsy Megas. I am a member of the City Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, and also I serve on the VTA Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee for the county. I would like to thank the staff, especially for the separated bike lane plan and for the interim plan. And I'm also glad to see the wider sidewalks and trees and the narrower lanes. I think all of those changes should help with speeds, noise, and heat along this corridor. To address one of the chair's concerns from earlier, you already have bikes on El Camino. It's about 2% of our road miles in the city of Santa Clara, and something approaching 25% of the bicycle and pedestrian related collisions. So you already have bikes on El Camino. They are already interacting with buses. Bus drivers actually receive specific training, and many streets already have buses and bikes coexisting. The buses are not the hard part. On El Camino, the many driveways, the intersections, the parking on the street is definitely the hard part, and the lack of a specific place. I would caution against piecemeal implementation of the interim bike lane, simply because it pushes, to not eliminate parking pushes people into the car lane. And I would also ask staff, in particular, to bring both the interim and the longer term bike lane back to the BPAC for review by people who regularly ride bikes. Thank you.
I just want to just jump in a little bit on that. It's like, I agree 100%. I travel El Camino quite often, and it's frightening how unsafe it is for bicycles. We even recently had a bicycle death near Goodwill, and I, believe it or not, was there about a minute and a half after it happened, and it's quite life altering to realize that someone lost their life because a driveway was somewhat blinded by parking. So I do hope that the bicycle paths are kept with the safest possible interaction with cars. And I think that's my main concern, is the interaction with buses and cars. It needs to be done in a safe way where they're not popping in and out of the bike lane constantly. Okay, I don't want to soapbox on it. I think we have another, Bruce is up next.
Bruce, you will have to unmute yourself.
Hi, my name is Bruce He. So I think I totally agree with one of the commissioners. So for the north side, because of the 4 to 6 story buildings, I think a lot of the solar panels will be blocked. And what is the city's response to that? That's it. Thank you.
Very concise, thank you. I think that we're capturing these comments, and I know that staff is going to definitely take them into consideration. It's not like we're locked in 100%, but I think we also have to be careful about north side, south side, in the sense that property values would be pretty dramatically impacted, and we have to be careful that we provide architecture that's considerate of the sun and fair to both sides of the street. So hopefully that can be accomplished too with all of the specific design guidelines. Any other commissioner comments on that issue right now, or we can wait and talk later?
Oh yeah, very quick. Actually, that reminds me, in the specific plan, they also, you see at the back of the building, they slowly going down. I think for the north side, it really makes sense. But for the south side, I'm thinking maybe we can relax a little bit, give the developer more room to design the building. Since I think that one probably it's, if it's for visual, right? Just from top, from high to low, if it's just for visual, yeah, I think it's nice to have. But as Zander mentioned, right? If we lower some portion of the building, then we have to increase the density of the other one. So if we remove some of the restriction on the south side, maybe it's better. Yeah, that's it. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Yeah, I think I understand the concern, and I'm a little worried that it's really, I think it's more about the massing than it was specifically about the light casting. Yeah, I think as a resident right behind one of those buildings, I'm not sure it would be a great eye experience to look out at a 4-story building going straight up in your backyard. But you're right, though, the amount of setback, maybe the adjacency to the property line and things could be adjusted for south side if sun is a concern. So thank you. Adam Thompson, next.
Hi, good evening, commissioners, planning and staff. Adam Thompson, the head of chair of DCTF. I was also luckily enough to be a part of this commission as well, and it taught me a lot of great many things. There's a couple things that I'd like to point out that I think really need to be solidified before approving this plan. One of them is the community benefits should be defined. It shouldn't be left up to DAs. I think a lot of the community, as well as the developers, would like to know what they're getting into before proceeding with a proposal for a project along the El Camino Real. Another one is, I think parking has been a big issue, and I think we've all struggled with it. And it creates a lot of massing as well as cost for a developer as well as the community. I know massing, especially being that the lots are very shallow along El Camino Real, is a big concern for the residents. And parking is an easy way to be able to demass a structure while still getting the density in units, that the state is pushing for. I think there needs to be a better strategy for doing community parking along El Camino that would allow a short-term solution and a long-term reconstruction or redevelopment over time. And that's something that this plan does not currently address. And then lastly, like I spoke of briefly, is the massing. I think that, where there are single family residents behind these adjacent properties really needs to take into consideration. I believe one of the commissioners said much earlier that the massing is very high, and a 45-degree angle really does not provide the privacy and security that I believe that the residents are accustomed to and should be really considered. I mean, massing should be built where it is more reasonable to the current residents. And I do understand we have a housing problem and a crisis, and we are looking to do it. So that's what I would ask. Thank you.
Thank you. Unless there's other comments, we'll move to John Lesnick.
Thank you so much. I won't waste too much time on pleasantries because I only have 2 minutes. So I'd like to commend Chair Salimi for his sort of concern about traffic as well as the bicycles. Parking is going to be an issue despite the sort of understatement of only 31% utilization. Also, Councilman Hong, sorry, I'm sorry about the title, but being concerned about the neighbors again, about the shade. Again, my concern is the city tries to pass it off as, oh, it's just during December. Commissioner Hero for his concern about reducing the commercial space. That's one of the things that I thought was the main bonus about having this development project, was to be able to walk to these shops and bring business to Santa Clara. So I appreciate that. So I think that's going to be a concern, and also impacts the parking question that's sort of that's been passed off, I think, already. And then also sort of stress again Sanders' point about housing. The whole point of really is to get the housing numbers up. So I'm really confused at the citizen here listening to the city try and justify and going out of their way to rezone for a developer to come in underneath what the plan's proposed. I mean, you're making a plan, you put a lot of effort into it. So my feeling is you should stick to it and meet those guidelines. So I'm a resident just behind this plan. I'm all for it, but I also want to know what the city is doing, pushing new development plans in the transition zones. It seems very odd to be putting forward more development plans before the ECRs even set. So this is going to come up again. The bigger concern also is that quid pro quo for these, the last speaker spoke to, about development options in order for special consideration. So it's getting taken out of the commission's hands, and that's scary enough. They shouldn't have that option to make deals. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone want to jump in on a comment to that? No? Okay. I appreciate all this input. It's actually somewhat revealing how much is going into this process. We as commissioners hear what we have available from presentations and from our studies, but we're missing a little bit of the direct feedback from the people directly affected by the plan changes and the way El Camino is being developed. So having direct feedback helps us to adjust our perspective on the whole process. I'd like to move on then, I guess, to Carl Volker. Still showing mute. Okay.
Hello.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Carl Volker. I live on El Camino in Sunnyvale, but one of my favorite restaurants is on El Camino in Santa Clara, which motivated me to call in here because I would love to be able to bike or ride the bus there instead of having to drive, but that is really impractical right now. So I think this is a great plan. I encourage you to vote for it. And I'm focusing more on the complete streets aspects here, but the increased housing densities are also badly needed. So this is really a great plan for all those reasons. A couple more specific things I have to say. Having a substantial barrier between the bike lane and the street is really important to make cyclists feel safer and to actually be safer. You know, a simple metal fence or metal bollards, it doesn't stop cars who are just totally not paying attention, and it doesn't make people feel safe. So if you really want to encourage people to bike, if you want to reduce vehicle miles traveled by getting people on bikes, you've got to make biking as safe as you possibly can. And so that's a great part of this plan. One more thing I'll say is that the issue of street sweepers for protected bike lanes, it comes up all the time. It comes up in other cities. It's come up in Sunnyvale. And you know, people want to use it as an excuse not to build these lanes. And what I would say is, if all of these cities are all confronting the same problem right now, and they are, all of these neighboring cities want to build protected bike lanes, let's share that equipment. Let's, you know, if you don't need to be sweeping the bike lane every day of the week, every day of the month. These cities could go in together, could share the street sweeper. It shouldn't have to be a problem. So, you know, let's cooperate and build the protected bike lanes that we need. Thank you.
Right, thank you. I kind of agree that making decisions based upon equipment is a poor way to make a decision. You can always get equipment that you need.
May, Chair?
Okay, go ahead.
I just wanted to kind of echo a little bit and add to the comment you just made after Speaker Pryor. It's really gratifying for me as a commissioner to hear input from city residents. And I want to thank the last speaker too, because while he may not live in Santa Clara, we're no longer an island in the Bay Area. We're all connected. There are regional issues that affect each other. And I'm very happy that we're hearing from others who live in nearby cities that use some of the same streets and pathways that we do. It's very much appreciated. Thanks.
Okay. Carl, let's see, Joey P.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Hey, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. I'm a homeowner in the neighborhood adjacent to the lot where Tom is proposing the Bayview Properties development. I'm actually on the other side of Calabasas behind the Firestone there. You know, living back here, it's a nice, quiet neighborhood. I moved here because I wanted to raise a family here. And, you know, I'm a little bit concerned about, the really tall buildings, the topic of the shadow being cast across the neighborhood from these tall buildings was something that I saw in the slides, but tonight watching the video, that was the first time I saw it in kind of more detail. So especially for these kind of shallower lots, like especially the Firestone lot and the one that Tom is concerned with, these lots are adjacent to the neighborhoods. They're Calabasas in particular is a gateway to a nice little neighborhood with some schools and parks. I don't think it's appropriate to have essentially skyscrapers butting up against these single family homes. So yeah, that's about it. Thanks for the opportunity to speak.
Okay, thank you. I guess we're moving on to Seamless Bay Area. Please introduce yourself when you speak.
Good evening. This is Adina Levin, and I am not representing Seamless Bay Area on this call, but Zoom did not let me change that name when I dialed in. I am here urging you to support this plan, agreeing with several other people who have also commented on how the good job the plan does in making El Camino much nicer as a place to walk and bike and use transit. I live a little bit north of Santa Clara, but travel towards San Jose and back, and love to be able to stop somewhere in the middle, and that will make it so much nicer to stop taking a bus and a bike and come and eat at the restaurants and visit the other places to visit. I'm also really glad to see all of the homes that are provided for in this plan. We do have a major housing crisis, and many people really struggle to live in the area, and providing the homes will the state legal requirements were described, but also providing places that people can live in our area, which is such a tough place to live, will be very helpful as well. So thank you very much, and we'll encourage you to approve the plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the whole commission will hopefully agree that we're here to try and make it the best living situation we can for our city, and it's a constant push and pull against density when we're landlocked or border locked in this case. There really isn't any way to add mandated homes, and there's really no way to help alleviate the housing crisis without some density. So I think we're all trying our best to make sure it goes to the right areas and doesn't impact as much of single family home in other lower density areas as we can avoid. Boy, I'm really soapboxing tonight. I apologize. The next speaker we have is Monica Malone or Malon.
Hi, my name is Monica Mallon, and I'm a transit advocate and transit rider in Santa Clara County. I'm supportive of this plan and want to urge you.
Monica, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you're very soft. If you could please speak up.
Yeah, can you hear me better now?
That's much
Yeah.
better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm supportive of this plan, and I want to encourage you all to vote in support of it. I think it's really going to have a positive impact on the community. But I do really want to encourage the city to work with Caltrans and VTA on transit signal priority in this corridor. Everybody that's taken the bus on El Camino knows that it's really slow, but it doesn't have to be. So I hope you all will consider opportunities to speed up transit. Thank you.
Thank you. I've been an advocate of smart lights, which unfortunately is just another decade away at this rate. Hopefully we'll see that in the coming future, where they all have cameras and know what's going on the street and adjust accordingly instead of by simple timers. That would help too. But the VTA issue, very good point. I hope we're capturing that. Next would be Gabby Landevery.
Gabby, you have been unmuted.
Yes, I was double muted. Thank you. My name is Gabby Landevery. Thank you for giving me the time to speak. I want to thank everyone for their hard work on this plan. I am part of the Santa Clara Community Advocates Group that Matthew had mentioned earlier. I fully support, encourage a yes vote on this plan. I'm also the Santa Clara lead for SVBC. I just wanted to reiterate how important it is to make this El Camino safe for cyclists. But it's not just making it safe for cyclists, and making it safer for all road users, drivers, pedestrians, anyone who uses that corridor. Some comments were made about on-street parking. I think generally on-street parking makes it unsafe for everyone, blocks visibility for drivers, for pedestrians, for anyone using the road. I think that I've commented on this before. I think the businesses should share their parking. The parking lots are not fully used all the time. There's plenty of parking in the parking lots to go around. So I think that something, either incentivizing or something for them to share their parking. Also, I just wanted to add on the comments regarding public transportation. While I like to bike, I understand it's not so easy for others to go on bikes. And yes, please work with VTA to come up with more frequent buses. I think the community shuttle is a great idea. You know, and if that can somehow be implemented, I think that would encourage a lot of folks to not drive their cars. Thank you.
Thanks very much. We're actually coming up on the last hand from the public, which is Linda Knepper.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Bus thing, as a recent bus rider, it's $1 for a senior citizen. Thank you. At each way, $1 each way. And the problem with that is if you're using it as a shuttle, you're only riding like 1 or 2 stops down. And so it limits the number of people who can actually pay that every time they want to park and then ride. So I'd like to see something for within Santa Clara, you show your pass, and get on and get off at a cheap rate. Other thing is looking at the shadow on Calabasas and near there. The problem is not that it's only the December, it's before December and then after December. So I like the fact that the approved building is a little bit shorter, less shadow. But I still, yes, I would vote for this. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't think my advocacy or my support for the shuttle was going to be a cost-based one. I was hoping for a free shuttle on a very limited distance. Get on, get off, and you have a start and stop point, and it loops around and goes back the other way. So hopefully we can figure out something like that. I don't think it's fair to senior citizens, kids, or anyone else that want to use the shuttle to get up and down El Camino. Okay, I think that's the last public speaker. Was there any comments or questions for the public speakers from the commission? If not, I'll entertain a motion to close public hearing.
So moved.
Second, Priya.
Okay.
I was just going to make a comment that Commissioner Biagini, we do not have you in the system right now because you joined the meeting late. So I will have to put someone else in at the moment if I could. As I put Priya in as the mover, could we maybe have somebody else make the second? And then Commissioner Biagini, I'll get you added in.
I'll
second that.
And that was Commissioner Hero?
Yes.
Thank you.
I never get to second anything.
The vote is to close public hearing. Commissioner Biagini,
Yes.
Commissioner Cherukuru,
Aye.
Commissioner Hero,
Yes.
Commissioner Wang,
Yes.
Commissioner Akezi,
Yes.
Chair Salane.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Okay, it passes unanimously. I know procedurally we'll move on to internal conversation, et cetera. I would like to suggest a 5-minute recess just for people to, get a drink or stand up and move around a little bit. We've been at it 2 hours and 15 minutes straight. It would be helpful if we could have a 5-minute recess if there's others that agree.
Second that.
Okay.
Sure.
You can second it too, Chair.
I declare a 5-minute recess. Boom. Hey, I get powers of the chair. And then let's be
Thank
back.
you.
Let's try and be back by 20 after, actually. That'll give us 7 minutes.
Okay.
8:20. Okay, thank you. Okay, let's
Thank you.
resume our process. Looking for hands among the commissioners for comments on the public feedback. They may not all be back yet. I see none. I can't be.
Well, hang on. I'm getting something that says I can't start my video because the host has stopped it. Is that part of adding me to the process, Elizabeth? Or did I do?
No, it shouldn't be. I've added you in as an attendee. I've started the meeting. There you go.
Now I'm on. Okay, never mind. I didn't know
Yeah.
that. Sorry, my internet's been pretty spotty again.
Yeah, it's just
so
kind of right.
I'm hoping I make it through to the end.
Well, you've been doing great so far.
I know is a god.
So are we tackling this piecewise tonight? Are there various components of the presentation that we have to deal with individually, like the EP, or the environmental impact report and mitigation monitoring report?
There's 4 separate motions I would ask you to make, Mr. Chair.
All right. Could you, I don't see it in my cheat sheet, so if there's a way you could break them down for me, it would be very helpful.
You want me to put the slide back on the screen?
That would be tremendously helpful.
Okay.
Leslie, are you still having a problem with your video?
Let's see. Nope, now it works.
Okay, okay.
Okay. Everybody see that?
All right. So if there's no other conversation, I'll entertain motions on the adoption of a resolution to certify the final EIR. Or do we want to take this in pieces other than that? Xander, can you give us a helpful hint which way is the most efficacious way of getting through the 4 separate pieces?
Well, I would agree that it would make sense to take the environmental separately.
Yeah.
If you want to combine the others, you could, but I suspect there may be amendments proposed by 1 or more commissioners. And those amendments would probably be directed towards either just the plan or the specific plan and the zoning.
Yeah.
So it may, you can have a discussion about everything and then vote individually.
Yeah. The situation I'm seeing is we've kind of already had all of our conversations during public presentations and pre-opening of the public hearing. I don't see any other hands going up to comment. So I guess we can just try tackling it. I'll take a motion on the first item of adopting a resolution, approve and certify the final EIR. If anyone wants.
I move that we adopt a resolution approving and certifying the final EIR prepared for the El Camino Real East Specific Plan, including CEQA findings.
Okay. I see Commissioner Kezi. Do you have an amendment? You're muted.
Excuse me. Thank you. Thank you. Well, I'm sorry. I raised my hand right before the motion was just made. Do we need to figure out what to do with that proposed development at the corner of Calaveras and El Camino? Because if we go through with this, and if it turns out that we approve everything, that developer is going to be kind of left in the in the high and dry, from what I understand. So, yeah. Thank you.
If there is discussion to be had on that development, I would suggest that it take place when you're considering the second motion, the specific plan.
Okay, and the development is not big enough to impact the EIR, right?
Yeah,
that is correct.
Thank you.
I'm still waiting for a second.
I make I second the motion.
Okay, thank you.
And for the record, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Chair Kuru, that was a motion to recommend that the planning.
That's what I thought. I was like, I was wondering the same thing, and I'm like reading off the language, and I'm like, when was the last time we actually adopted a EIR? Okay.
We hid the recommendation at the top of the slide. So it's that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution saying that the City Council.
Nice try there, Xander, but okay. That was staff recommendation, but recommends it. Staff recommends adoption of resolution to City Council with everything else that follows. Thanks.
Yeah, I always read everything as a recommendation since we're not making final approvals.
And I second that.
Okay.
Okay. Through the chair, Xander, does this include MMRP adoption?
The resolution includes the EIR and the MMRP and the CEQA findings.
Okay. All right. Next time staff should help us know out on that. Sorry. It's okay, Leslie.
So the motion is
trying to
made
make the
by,
slide short.
the motion is made by Commissioner Chair Kuru, seconded by Commissioner Casey, and this is staff recommendation number 1. So that's how I'm listing this. We'll start the vote.
Okay.
Commissioner Biagini,
Yes.
Commissioner Chair Kuru,
Yes.
Commissioner Hero,
Yes.
Commissioner Wang,
Yes.
Commissioner Ikezi,
Yes.
Chair Salam.
Yes.
Thank you. And the motion passes.
All right, I see a unanimous pass. Do I hear a motion on the second item, and then we'll open conversation on it?
You do. This is Commissioner Biagini. I'd like to recommend that we recommend to the City Council, how's that, Xander, that we adopt a resolution approving the El Camino Real specific plan, a specific plan consistent with California Government Code sections 65457.
Through the chair and with some amount of maybe amendment, but actual discussion, we had brought forward quite a number of comments through our deliberation earlier that entailed massing, height. We talked about other variables, but also more to Commissioner Ikezi's comment more specifically, how are we handling that specific pending application or currently processed application? And I wanted to ask Xander to help us out. Is there a grandfathered clause potential or pipeline project, like I'm saying grandfather, but pipeline protection for some of these projects currently in process?
We do not have one built into the draft plan.
Was there a reason it wasn't?
No, that's always a policy call, what to do about pending projects.
Yeah, I want to say my timeline's a little messed up, but a year or so, maybe probably 2 years ago, the council gave us direction on sort of a pipeline project provision. And their direction was that once the draft land use plan was set and we were moving forward with that draft land use plan, that we could process projects that were on file and look for consistency with the El Camino Real specific plan of what we've done thus far. But otherwise consistency with the general plan. So council gave us the direction to just process projects as normal once that draft land use plan was determined.
Leslie, I might have missed your clarification. So are you saying the City Council has the ability to allow for certain applications to come through pipeline, or is that at staff discretion?
So the City Council provided staff direction to, at a certain point, which was when that draft land use plan was set, to allow projects to move forward. So to process those projects. So that's currently what we're doing with all the projects on file, including the one at the corner of Calabasas and El Camino. We're processing them as normal.
Okay, as normal being that the current existing general plan and
Correct.
zoning ordinance requirements, not with the specific plan future.
Right. However, the specific plan will, should it be adopted by the council at their hearing in June, that would change the land use designation for that property owner. And then they would need to be in conformance with the specific plan. If they were going to go to hearing prior to the specific plan being adopted, it would have been a different story, but they're going to go to hearing after the specific plan is adopted.
So in other words, there's no grandfathering currently baked.
Right. Yes.
Okay. And is it possible to make that as a recommendation on behalf of Planning Commission that the city continue to consider applications in process through the pipeline review?
You can make that general recommendation, or you can make the specific one for that particular site. Their specific ask was to keep the density at corridor residential, 16 to 45 dwelling units. So you could be specific as to that parcel, or you could have a more generalized grandfather provision. Applications received by date X, process them under the.
I like the generic, but I'm not certain if they are the commissioners, but I'll leave it for the deliberation. But that was one aspect of it for the friendly amendment. And then two, to consider additional language, either in the resolution or in conditions, however we want to quantify it, that we consider through the objective design standards, some of those suggestions on massing. We had additional combination of comments, and I'm losing my track, but I'll try to, the historic preservation aspect of it, and I'm looking just around the room. I definitely want to confirm the ability to allow for, what was my specific comment? Give me just a second, but yeah, somebody help me out here from the records, but I did want to ask staff to how do we quantify all of these recommendations? I know we've gone a lot in just comments, but is there a way that either the minutes substitute for our motion to say and associated recommendations per minute? I'm being kind of easy on us right now, but staff, help us.
As far as the minutes, I've never done that before in making a recommendation, because some of your feedback was comments, some of them, were actual items that maybe you wanted addressed. For instance, your question on making sure there was a diversity of colors, that all the buildings weren't earth tone. That's not like we had stated before, that's not an objective standard we put in there specifically, but we did put in an ability for a developer to choose options between, color and materials.
And some of the uses that I was trying to quantify, I saw your CUP process, and I'm not sure how data centers are quantified. The other thing was, we haven't even thought far enough of how technology and the tech hubs and potential, zones can become just hubs for people to avail of as entertainment / whatever. But I'm trying to be open in our two things. One, the process itself on how we quantify uses. I saw a very generic standard boiler template. There is nothing innovative as what I saw, but how do we catch that into our process, that there might be differences in the future that we need to account for? And two, do we get to again see the actual objective design standards, or is it already here that I'm not seeing?
It's already there.
Okay.
So they would not come back to you again. Yeah. And if you want to include in your motion that we add, you recommend adding a line item to make it clear that data centers aren't a permitted use along the corridor, that's something you can absolutely do. It was not our intention to allow data centers on the corridor. We just didn't specifically make it clear that they're excluded. They're typically only allowed per the general plan in our industrial areas.
If this is helpful, Priya, I'm fine with the friendly amendment about the generic grandfathering. I'm fine, absolutely, with regards to the comments, and I'm going to let staff try to capture them better, about historical resources. And, I'm starting to lose my mind too.
I know.
And the other stuff you said, how's that?
And the other stuff.
I'm
not sure you can quantify and the other stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, that might be a bit difficult. Can I
I do want to, I do
Can I
want to
suggest
state
that
the
you-
massing part of it from the shadow and yeah, height strategy be treated differently for the north and south, especially adjacent to the residential. But I'll leave it up to the commission. Those were thoughts that I tried to recap quickly while I'm sitting here, but.
Okay. Can I?
Does that make sense, Lynn?
Yeah, I was just going to suggest that you perhaps, and Xander can correct the legalese of it, offer that one specific development project on the corner be considered without penalty at their current proposal. And that's a recommendation. That's not a mandate, right? It's a recommendation. The city council can consider it as they wish, but to give a golden pass for that one project, because we don't have the experience or the understanding of all the other possible specific issues that may come up. And it's not fair to take the global view of everybody gets grandfathered in, because that could really mess up the whole effort being made on the plan. But it does seem reasonable to try and bring that one specific property, given its adjacency to the smaller density project. And it's a corner, so it won't carry across the street to the next parcel. Does that help at all, perhaps?
It helps, but maybe I'm not clear on how many other projects are similarly situated in terms of the process like that one.
Yeah. I was trying to specifically point out that it's dangerous for us to create a blanket.
I agree, except that we're hearing about one, but we don't know how many others might be out there. If there's only, two of them all together, that's
Four.
Four.
Leslie's pointing out 4.
There's 4. I had a slide on it. There are 4 pending projects currently on file.
So Chair, I do agree, and I want to. We can put a date by which it was the applications were received as the pipeline provision. So Leslie, maybe you can help us to state that applications that continue to meet and advance the goals of the specific plan be considered along with the application dates. And Leslie, maybe just insert the date of those, prior to the most furthest one.
The most recent of the 4 would be the cutoff date. Right?
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Are we walking into a minefield, Xander?
Well, I can give you the exemption for the one site. That is very easy. They want to be corridor residential, 16 to 45. That's very black and white. We can simply put that into a recommendation. Separate from that, can we also do a grandfather clause and have a date? Yes, but that involves some drafting, some thought, what's the date we're going to use? How far along do they in the process? Deemed complete, just application, just napkin drawn on a bar, there are a lot of variables in the more general. So I would suggest if you like the idea of having that one exempt, put that in your motion. And then separate to that, if you're open to a more generalized thing, put that as a separate recommendation, because that one we may run.
Yeah, I agree.
When we get
Thanks, Xander. And I think I'll make my friendly amendment along with that recommendation that we acknowledge the application. And I don't have the address, but feel free to use that for the motion to be the one. And I'm hearing an echo. To be the absolute. What was the zoning that they were requesting that it be?
Corridor residential, 3155 El Camino Real.
To be considered as corridor residential, and to allow City Council to consider applications that have been in process through a pipeline that are reasonable and aligned with the specific goals, specific plan goals. Okay. I can paraphrase this best as much, but you get it.
And the other 2 applications, sorry, I should have made this a little more clear. The other 2 applications that are on file are consistent with the draft specific plan in their densities.
Awesome. Okay. So the grandfather provision is relatively simple there. Okay. So the language is consistent in the motion then. Elizabeth, I hope
I don't envy
you're
you.
doing a smarter job than me right now.
Well, I cannot say I am, but so I know we have a motion by Commissioner Biagini and it is seconded by Commissioner Cherukuru.
It's a friendly amendment. I can second it.
Okay.
If the maker of the motion is amenable
I'm
to
fine
the.
with it. I'm fine.
Thank you. Were there any other comments that I might have missed? And I'm looking to my commission here. Did I miss any of your comments for inclusion into the recommendation?
Are the comments about the historical properties
Yes.
included? Okay.
Yes.
Well, I
Yes.
know you and I know it, but poor Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Well,
So I had at least
I'm going
three.
to make you repeat this. So I can tell you what I have, but I'm going to need you to
Yeah.
clarify a little bit better.
Let's hammer on this openly until it's right, and then we can move forward.
Yes.
Sounds good.
Yes, agreed. So we have historic preservation. Elizabeth, I hope you captured that.
Well, all I
these-
have is that historic preservation resources to
Be
to have that as,
considered.
okay.
Be considered
Add a policy
into the
to the
specific.
plan.
Yes, yes.
Add a policy plan.
Add a policy to the
Add
plan.
a policy plan for the historic preservation resources. Okay.
Yes.
And then the project, Commissioner Cherukuru, that you are talking about is the Bayview Development Group Plan.
35 El Camino Real. They're going to maintain it as corridor residential, 16 to 45 dwelling units per acre.
I'm sorry, Xander, you kind of faded out a tad bit.
Okay, 3155 El Camino Real. They're going to make it corridor residential, 16 to 45 dwelling units per acre.
Corridor? Like
Corridor
corridor? Okay,
residential,
okay.
yeah, like walking down
Got
the
it.
It's the zoning
Okay,
district.
I didn't know. Got it, got it. Okay. So we have the Bayview Development Project. We have the Historic Preservation Resources be considered.
And then a
The third.
policy. Oh, do you want to say?
Go ahead, Ben. No. Xander, you say it most. Go
And
for
then
it.
a policy to establish a grandfathering policy for applications that are already in progress through a pipeline, provided that those applications are aligned with specific plan goals.
That sounds like it should hold up.
I have one more. I want to make sure we do acknowledge Commissioner Wine's comment on massing. So I don't know how, is that like a design objective that I'm recommending? Leslie, help me out here.
Yeah, so we do have a number of objective design standards around massing. And it sounds like that maybe you want those to be lowered on the north side and possibly increased on the south side, if I understood that correctly.
I'm not
Yes.
certain if it's increased, but lowered is definitely the case. Go
Definitely lowered on the north side.
Yeah, I think probably increased on the south side makes more sense.
ahead. Okay.
Yeah.
I just hope it aligns with the general height that is also planned for this area. Leslie, you got that?
Yeah, yes.
This is Rena.
Yeah, I mean,
sorry, I just wanted to add that if you are going to recommend to increase height on the south side, I do think that this issue has been like pretty controversial with the community.
I thought so,
I
yeah.
felt like that should be part, people weren't aware that that would be maybe an option here tonight. And I just wanted to clarify, because I think Commissioner Huang also suggested that in context of, Assistant City Attorney Abby's comment about, needing to increase density when you're decreasing density. And that wouldn't have to happen in this instance related to this situation, because we haven't actually acted on the height. We're taking that action tonight, so we're not decreasing what currently exists. So I just wanted to throw that out there, just so that we don't get the community really concerned about an action they didn't anticipate.
Right, you don't have to raise the height in order to lower it in this context.
Yeah, that's okay. I agree. So we'll just go with the recommendation to consider reduction in height on this north side
Okay.
and
So-
allow.
Or solar considerations versus massing. Massing is a completely different issue.
Yes, we have a number of standards around massing, but reducing the height, would you be more specific about that? Reduce the height by 1 story, by 2 stories?
Wang?
Before we get into stories, I thought it was more of an inset so that the angle of the sunlight wouldn't cast
So
longer shadows.
So the proposed ratio is 1:1, 1 foot setback for every 1 foot of height.
Yeah,
So you would like to increase
north side for,
that on the north side.
but then that's another solar study. But that should take 10 minutes on an advanced system.
So let me just put it more generically, to consider the solar impact on the north side and recommend appropriate design-based. Yeah, it's going to be based on the actual design. Just consider an additional caveat on your actual review process.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's fair, and it's ambiguous enough that staff can make it work.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
sorry. Yeah, actually, last Friday, I went to the job site. I met the Bayview Development Group. I also visited some existing, probably 4 to 5 story buildings on the north side. I think it really depends. I also talked to some residents adjacent to those 4 to 5 story buildings, some residents behind it. I think it really depends the lot size. If it's deep enough, probably 4 to 5 story, it's okay. So yeah, some residents told me even in the winter, probably they don't have a shadow issue. I think it all depends on the design. So yeah, I think the commissioner mentioned just make the solar as a consideration. I think that's a really good idea. Just make sure the shadow won't cover the single family house. I think that's it. Then probably not necessary to say reduce the height from 5 story to 3 story. Not necessary. It really depends on the site. Yeah, I think
I think we captured it.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you. Perfect.
We got it. So the last that I did want to clarify is how would we treat data center applications at this through this specific plan? It's a question for staff.
I would just add to your recommendation to add data centers as a prohibited use along El Camino in the use table.
Okay. I'll look to the commission if that's a appropriate recommendation for this plan, considering the intensity, the housing, the nature of the pedestrian-oriented development that this is going to allow for. I'm going to allow for the commission to opine on it before I make the friendly amendment.
I think it's naturally excluded, but it never hurts to put a
Okay.
To say no.
Thank you, Chair. So make the recommendation, the fourth, that we recommend that data centers be prohibited along this specific plan, along the El Camino Real. I don't care where they go. Those are the 4 bullets as friendly amendment to Commissioner Biagini's motion. And then I'm ready to second.
Fine with me.
Thank you.
Elizabeth gets the prize for crafting the motion.
He does.
Okay, so I do have it, but we also have it recorded, and I will work with Leslie Xavier to make sure we get this correct in the minutes. Okay, so the motion is to approve the recommendation number 2.
Recommendation number 2, yeah.
Right. Okay, so with the friendly amendment, so I have that language. I'll put that in here.
I think there were 5, Elizabeth, just correct me if I'm wrong, but I counted
Well,
5.
I mean,
with
I
the
could
last.
somewhat read them to you, but it'll have to be defined better.
Okay, yeah.
The corridor residential for the existing application of Bayview Development at 3144 through 3155 El Camino Real. A policy to establish a grandfather clause for the projects already in the pipeline consistent with the specific plan. Historic preservation resources to be considered to add a policy plan. Consider the solar impact on the north side in the review process, and to recommend that data centers, that they be a prohibited use on El Camino.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's vote on this. Commissioner Biagini,
Yes.
Commissioner Cherukuru,
Yes.
Commissioner Hero,
Yes.
Commissioner Wang,
Yes.
Commissioner Ikezi,
Yes.
Chair Salame.
Yes.
Thank you. And the motion passes unanimously.
Excellent.
I want to, through the chair, commend staff. It's been, Leslie, great job. And Alexandra, I don't know.
Alessandra, yeah.
Alessandra, congratulations and kudos to the entire team. This is an incredible specific plan and should be actually at the forefront of many more to come. So thank you for doing a wonderful job.
I will second that emotion.
Emotion.
We have 2 more pieces to go, and remember, we have a third, or we have an item that we push to the end of the agenda. So
Is there a reason why we can't take that item now, since the rest of the items
2
are
more
on?
motions we have to vote on.
Oh, okay. Got it.
That'll keep us from doing the other item. Let's hit the other 2 from the slide, which now that it's gone, I don't know what they are.
The next one is a recommendation on adopting a resolution approving a general plan text amendment, creating the 3 land use designations for the specific plan. And I would, just to help guide the commission, suggest that you don't need to make any amendments to this particular motion. That all the changes you made apply to the previous motion and arguably the zoning one, which is the next one. But this one, you don't need to tinker with unless you have other ideas.
No. Do I hear a motion, which I'm going to second? Who is going to move on number 3?
That was Nancy. So moved.
So the motion was made by Chair Salame.
No, the motion is made by Nancy.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And I'm seconding it for just because I need to second something. Because I think this is a very, straightforward issue.
So too. I think the other issues around that were dealt with in the previous motion.
Yeah.
The motion is to
Adopt a resolution approving a general plan
right.
text amendment creating.
Recommendation number 3.
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Biagini,
Yes.
Commissioner Cherukuru,
Yes.
Commissioner Hero,
Yes.
Commissioner Wang,
Yes.
Commissioner Ikezi,
Yes.
Chair Salame.
Yes.
Thank you. And the motion passes unanimously.
Do one of the other commissioners want to go? We all get a chance here.
Xander, where would I recommend consideration for a free shuttle? Is that just a separate thing altogether?
Go ahead and throw it in the 4th one.
Okay.
We'll include it in our discussion of the rest of it. But and for the commission's benefit, the next one is the recommendation on amending the zoning code. So far tonight, you talked about both height and permissible uses, namely prohibiting data centers. Both of those issues are relevant to the zoning ordinance. So a motion, it would be appropriate to include the height and the data centers in that motion.
Awesome. All right. Any motioners from our new commissioners, maybe? Pull it
We're
out.
giving the chance. Come on.
Chance to make a motion.
We'll help you.
All right, I'll go. Adopt I recommend resolution to City Council to adopt the El Camino Real zoning ordinance with the specific identification on the height, or I don't want to say identification, specific request to consider height and prohibition of data centers along El Camino Real
Well,
in
okay.
the specific plan.
Okay. And I'd like to make a friendly amendment that we recommend the implementation of a free or low-cost shuttle, free to seniors, low-cost shuttle that runs up and down El Camino to service the parking structures and local businesses.
As part of the circulation, maybe in your zoning. Thank you, Chair.
Some form funded by, hopefully funded by the businesses that wish to have the shuttle stop by them. I might be being too specific. I think just sticking with the free shuttle or subsidized shuttle for El Camino.
I will second the motion and the accepted friendly amendment.
Okay. Okay. I think, yeah, Commissioner Jericho motioned, Commissioner Biagini seconded, and I friendly amended it. And
Okay,
always
so the
look to my
motion
lawyer,
is,
make sure I don't make a mistake.
the motion is moved by Commissioner Cherukuru, seconded by Commissioner Biagini. Recommendation number 4 with a friendly amendment by Chair Salam with a specific request to consider height, to prohibit data centers in this specific plan, and to recommend a low cost / free shuttle as part of the specific plan.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Commissioner Biagini,
Yes.
Commissioner Cherukuru,
Yes.
Commissioner Hero,
Yes.
Commissioner Wang,
Yes.
Commissioner Casey,
Yes.
Chair Salam.
Yes.
Thank you. And the motion passes unanimously.
It's awesome to see the commission a single mind. Now that that is complete, I believe we want to go back and consider the item 1C from the consent calendar, which is the action on the use permit for a master sign program at 2350 Mission College Boulevard. I don't know, did staff had any presentation, or did the applicant have a presentation that they wanted to give us before we discuss it?
The project manager was going to be available for questions. Let's see. Is Debbie still here?
Yes, we didn't prepare a presentation given that the item was on consent, nor did the applicant prepare a presentation. So I can give you just a brief summary, and then if you have questions, specific questions.
Yeah, that'll be helpful, Debbie. Thank you.
Okay.
That I pulled this out from the consent calendar only because there was a voluminous document associated with the master sign program. And I know in the past, especially when it came to related projects, we've asked for specific, suggestions associated with the signage. So I want to make sure that this is aligned as well. So go ahead, Debbie.
Correct. Master sign program is designed to provide, to establish the size, location, materials, and maximum sign area on a project site, such as an office campus or multi-commercial tenant space, to equitably distribute signage in a manner that's beneficial to all the tenants, and that reduces sign clutter and provides a unified aesthetic on a project site. This particular project site is 8.6 acres. It's a mixed use in the sense that it's retail with primarily with office development. It's in the high intensity office and R&D sector of the city, which allows up to 2.0 FAR. This site is entitled for up to approximately 610,000 square feet of development on the site, of which already 13-story building was constructed back in the late 2000s, I think late 1990s, early 2000s. And then had subsequently been rezoned again to amend the PD that was established for it to intensify it with the addition of 300,000 more square feet of office and up to 56,000 square feet of retail. So today we have the 13-story building. We have that's occupied. We have a 6-story building, which is vacant. And we have a entitlement left over of another 150,000 square foot building, along with the retail building shown on the site plans. So at the time that the PD was established, it didn't contemplate, when the first 13-story building was constructed, it did not contemplate signage as part of the approvals. And per the zoning ordinance, per city code, if a PD does not, there wasn't signage contemplated in part of the PD zoning, then they have one of two courses. One is a approval of a use permit, and the other is to default to office area signage, like OA zoning, OG zoning, which is really restrictive. It's only the maximum you could do on an OA is 100 square feet of signage. When you have a site such as this with 8.6 acres and over 1,100 linear feet of signage, you can see, I mean, a linear feet of street frontage, you can see that 100 square feet of signage to be distributed among the buildings, among the tenant spaces, is just not suitable. So hence the application for the use permit to be in conformance with the zoning ordinance. And what is in the package are the types of signs, the maximum areas and the materials for each sign type, which includes wall identity signage, wall tenant signage, monument signs, and then a placemaking sign at the corner of Juliet and Mission College, which signifies this as Mission City Center as the name of the campus. So if you have any questions, that's it in summation.
Thanks, Debbie. I've got a chance to look at all of the actual. So similar to what I've stated in the past, is there an opportunity to consider, you'll definitely do tactile braille needed ADA requirements, but any other languages or universal language potentially on any of these? I didn't see it. I don't think it went to all the details. You just showed me monuments in your attachment, but I don't know if there was any opportunity. You're saying this is an 8-acre? So I'm trying to build a inclusivity here.
Well, it would be for the tenant. So it's really dependent upon the tenant. The tenant might have a trade name. So
okay.
It would be tenant driven as long as it's in compliance with the parameters of the, like the height, the overall area, how it's illuminated, what the materials are.
Office? It's all office.
No, it's not all office. It's primarily all office, but there is the commercial component of it, which fronts Juliet Street.
Okay, and that's what I'm trying to. Okay, I mean, I got the gist of it. My question really revolved around universal and placemaking as an opportunity here. So universal diversity and placemaking. Is there anything that can be included as part of conditions, or is this a goner in that it's pretty much buttoned down? There's nothing unique to it.
I don't know what, I'm not familiar with what, as an example, like how that would be created, because again, it would be you know, say NVIDIA or, you know, a Google or any other industry name would want to occupy the building. It would be, it would
Understood.
more than likely be their corporate trademark name. So.
Understood. Okay. Thank you, Debbie. I think I got the summary of it, and thanks for pulling this out of the consent calendar. So I'm ready to make a motion to approve the use permit.
I'll second it.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, since you pulled this, you do need to ask the applicant if they'd like to speak, and then if any member of the public would like to comment as well.
That we heard that the applicant was not having a presentation, but would the applicant like to speak?
We're here. My name's David Andrus with South Bay Development, and we manage the building. And actually, some good news, Debbie. We have been able to lease half of the first building, and we brought a tenant, Infoblox, over from San Jose for their corporate headquarters, and then also leased a floor to a company called Forward Networks for their corporate headquarters. So we've been very fortunate in the last year to get that done, and this will go a long way to having us be able to continue to lease the rest of the project. And as Debbie said, the 2390 building is done. The corner building, which is 2400, and the retail commercial building next door, they're pending kind of the completing leasing the first building, especially in today's climate. So we're thrilled to be able to move forward, and thank you for the consideration.
Thank you for that clarification, David.
Thank you, David, through the chair.
Heard a motion, I second it. We can take a vote.
And I don't see any hands up, so I'm assuming there's no members of the public that want to speak.
Yeah,
open public here.
Either the commission or the public. So
Move to close public hearing.
Well,
if there are none.
You can skip that tonight because it's technically not a public hearing item.
Yeah, it was a consent calendar item, so.
Okay.
The motion is to approve staff recommendation.
Yes.
That was my motion, and whoever wants to second it.
Right, just mentioning it as we start to vote. Commissioner Biagini?
Yes.
Commissioner Cherukuru?
Yes.
Commissioner Hero?
Yes.
Commissioner Wang?
Yes. Sorry.
Commissioner Casey?
Yes.
Chair Salim?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you all.
Awesome. Very good. Apologies for keeping you this late, but you can move forward quickly now.
Okay, now we're up to speed on El Camino. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you again. Have a good evening.
Okay. Let's get back down to where we were. I guess we're actually down to reports of commission, board, liaison, and committee. Any announcements or other items? I hear none, see none.
Commissioners or Chair Salim, this is Rena. I did want to acknowledge that the commission tonight on the consent calendar approved use of some funds for training, which I think we're going to get to. But that is in relationship to the form-based code training that we are planning on working with the downtown task force as well as the city council. And I think we are polling you all to see if July 15th works, because that's when the consultant is available. So I just wanted to acknowledge that we'll be setting up that meeting hopefully shortly, and you will all be attending.
Thank you. I have a placeholder on my calendar already, so that's great.
Yeah, we've established a quorum for the Planning Commission, at least for the meeting.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
I don't think everybody noticed, Rena, that your hand is a hand again.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Hey, it's there.
Yeah.
Not fully functional yet, but certainly appreciate not being in a cast. Thank you, Chair Salim.
All righty. I don't, is there any other announcements? Travel training reports, requests to attend training. We already just covered training for upcoming in the 15th. Is there any other training or reports? Seeing none, we can move on. Director of Community Development reports, Planning Commission budget updates. How much was the training? I didn't see that go by.
We are still solidifying the exact amount, but it'll be at a maximum of $2,000.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Is there any other budget report or anything?
I believe some maybe post-meeting materials were submitted, right, Elizabeth?
Well, not on budget, but
Okay.
we do have a budget. I thought Gloria was going to read it off, but I did send the budget report to the commission,
Yeah.
so you should
I
have
saw
it.
the numbers go by, but okay.
Sure, I have it in front of me. This month, we did renew the membership for American Planning Association. So the balance right now for the Planning Commission budget is approximately $10,213.
Awesome. Okay, I think we're pretty close to the end here. Upcoming agenda items.
So we are discussing, as a special meeting was held tonight, and we were able to move an item, the master plan program, a little bit earlier on to get it onto this agenda. We're going to confirm with staff, but we may not have scheduled items that are timing for the end of May, and we may be able to inform you all of a potential cancellation of that meeting. Once again, I really appreciate the commission's flexibility because, as you know, we have a really big body of work with our zoning code update, and study sessions were lining up, and a lot of work for you later on in the year. So I guess I would say perhaps take it while we can, because there's a lot coming this year, including some other specific plans that will be moving forward for approval as well.
Okay, awesome. City council actions, any that need to be reported?
Hello, Chair Salim and members of the commission. There are just a couple of items. One is that your approval of Planning Commission minutes. The last one, Elizabeth, I'm not sure what date this is. I just have the summary. Minutes have gone forward to City Council. There was just for our department, there was a creation of an Assistant Director of Community Development approved by Council at a 5-2 vote. And I'm not sure. That's really just Planning Commission of interest. There was actually a housing public, there was a public hearing on the final version of the fiscal year 21-22 annual action plan for the use of federal housing and urban development grant funds. That was approved 7-0. It says there was questions from council member Jane regarding the participation in the ERAP and efficiency in administration of PSA grants. So staff is going to return to council at a future meeting with discussion of potential actions to achieve more efficient administration of the PSA HUD grants. And that's it for your wrap up. So thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Anybody want to take the honors of the adjournment?
To adjourn.
Mic drop.
All right, I'll second it if no one else, but we have to do general consensus. Any objections?
I'm
Okay.
assuming it's a unanimous vote.
Unanimous vote in favor. Thank you all for being there. This was
Thank you, everyone.
semi-long meeting, but not the longest.
Thank you.
I know there's
Commissioner BGD is already in.
Yeah,
Huddled in.
these are the new
Bye.
time
Have a good evening.
Yeah, it's midnight here, so thanks, guys.
Oh,
Good night.
thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Good night. Bye bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Enjoy.